Welcome to part 15 of What If Camy Sends Naruto Back in Time to Fix His Mistakes. Please remember to like and subscribe as it motivates me to upload more in the future, and as always, link to the fanfiction is in the description. Konaha Council Chambers 36 days after leaving for Snow Country mission. Naruto, Ino, Temari and Samui appeared in a yellow flash outside of the Hokage's office. He had talked to Itachi on the tablets and informed him that he would be returning, so he wasn't surprised when Itachi guided the four of them down to the council chambers. They walked and talked on their way down, and Naruto knew that something had happened during his absence. Finally, Naruto and his girls stood in front of the Konaha council with Might Guy standing next to him. Itachi stood in front of his seat and pounded his gavel. I call this council meeting to order. The issues to be discussed today are the treaty with Snow, now dubbed Spring Country, and the call for aid from Demon Country. We will start with the Spring Country Treaty that Naruto has brought us. Naruto, please provide a summary of the mission and the particulars of the treaty that Spring Country has requested. Naruto bowed. Lord Hokage, my intelligence on Snow Country was spot on. We agreed to travel with and protect the camera crew during the filming. During our voyage across the seas, Sandayu admitted that he wished for us to usurp the tyrant Dodo. I knew that we could accomplish the mission, so I accepted the mission and contacted you. After getting the go-ahead for Lord Hokage, I began planning the combat side of the mission. Naruto paused here and nodded to Shikaku. Shikaku stood and addressed Naruto. We have heard Might Guy's report. It seems like you had everything well in hand, but how did you know where and when they would attack? It seemed like you had a terrifying level of foresight and accuracy in your predictions. Naruto smiled. Lord Nara, I have Sage Mode that can sense nearly 100 miles out. When I focused on Snow Country, I could feel their movements and agitation. For example, during first contact, I sensed them while we were still 10 miles away from the iceberg. Rather than letting them ambush us while we were on open waters, I asked the captain to stop at the iceberg. I had faith in my squad and knew that they were up to the task. Hiyashi stood this time and asked his question, and you found it appropriate to make a mockery of shinobi combat. I understand the desire to make a good movie, but you put shinobi at risk by giving them lines and assigned fighting styles. Naruto chuckled. I was hesitant to do so, but a clone of myself was there in every battle. I would never let my comrades get harmed. In fact, the only injury we suffered during the whole mission was myself getting hit by the ice dragons of Dodo. I only did that because I knew I could take it and I wanted that in the film. To put it in perspective, when you were sparring against Hinata, Neji and Hanabi, when they were you, did you fight them seriously? Did you not guide the fight to make points on how they should improve? Hiyashi nodded. Yes, I did. So, you knew that our shinobi were that far ahead of the snow shinobi, despite the advantage of the chakra armor. Naruto smiled. Yes, I did. I had the utmost faith in my comrades, and I gave them full warnings of the enemy's combat abilities before we engaged. I believe the results speak for themselves. It also had the added benefit of Claude promising to hire Konaha shinobi for all of his future productions. Hiyashi gave up on the argument and sat down. Itachi stood and cast a firm look at Naruto. Naruto, I know you are capable, but I order you not to use my shinobi in such a way again. In the event that the worst happened, it would have been entirely your fault. Naruto bowed deeply to the council. I understand, Lord Hokage. I accept any punishment you deem worthy. I admit that I got too far into my role in the movie. Itachi sat back down and smiled. Well, no harm no foul. Now, anything to add to Guy's report? Naruto shrugged. I believe he covered up to the fall of Dodo. I informed you as I was assisting the people of Spring Country. While we were filming the movie, the Spring Council drafted a request for alliance to Konaha, Uzushio and Wave. They also requested that we introduce them to Kumo and Kiri. They also pledged to pay Konaha for the installment of a teleportation tower. Itachi was nodding along, but it was Madame Shijimi that spoke next. Ruto, my husband has received a request for marriage from Spring Country. The daimyo, Koyuki Kazuhana, requested marriage with you. I assume you had that talk with her. Naruto sighed. Yes, I did. She claims that as a daimyo that I will be mandated by the other daimyo to take multiple wives. I told her that it is not possible at this time. My heart belongs to these three women, and I am bound by contract to take no other. Shijimi understood that Naruto had a special contract, but she didn't know the specifics. However, she didn't have to ask the question, it was Sume Inuzuka that spoke up. Ruto, we are grateful for all that you have done for us, but you keep mentioning some contract that you are bound by. Could you not elaborate on that for us? Naruto's consciousness was pulled into Camy's realm, and he knelt in front of the goddess of creation with his head down. It no longer startled him when it happened, so he awaited Camy's address. The goddess looked down on her chosen and she could stop the smile that graced her lips. She walked down to him and offered him a hand up. Rise, Naruto, you need not kneel to me. Camy said softly as she helped Naruto into a standing position. Naruto rose and looked expectantly into Camy's eyes. Yes, milady. What can I do for you? Camy giggled and swatted him in a playful manner on his shoulder. Oh, don't be so serious. I have called you here to tell you that you can tell the humans about our contract. Naruto dipped his head. Thank you, Lady Camy. Is there anything else I can do for you? Camy giggled and shifted nervously. Well, Ruto, I wanted to ask you a question. Naruto looked into the magnificent golden eyes of Camy and waited patiently. Would you like to be my eternal partner? Naruto remained frozen in place as the words bounced around his stunned mind. It took a minute to reboot, and he reacted in a comically shocked fashion. He backed away from Camy, tripped and fell on his butt while he was looking with confused eyes at the goddess. Finally, he stuttered out, Lady Camy, I am, he hung his head and took a breath. I am not worthy of you, Milde. You are a goddess, and I am a broken human. Camy knelt down next to Naruto and raised his chin with her godly hand. She placed a calming kiss on his forehead and looked longingly into his eyes. No, Naruto, you are so much more than that. You are so much more than I ever hoped you would be. Camy averted her eyes and suddenly became sheepish. I have watched you your whole life. I have seen all of the light and good you bring. If you accomplish the quest one gave you, then you will be eligible for godhood. Naruto was shocked once more, but the calming presence of Camy prevented him from freaking out. He took a deep breath and offered a weak smile. Thank you, milady. You know that my heart and soul belong to my wives, and I have done what I can to honor your wishes. I guess I would like to know why you would want me and how would it be possible. Camy nodded in understanding and raised Naruto to his feet. She snapped her fingers, and they sat down at the summoned table and Naruto poured them each some tea. Well, forgive me for being nervous. This is the first time in all of creation that I have felt this way. While I was watching you, I realized that I was beginning to feel again. I found myself longing for your presence and wishing for your embrace. Yes, Ruto, this is extremely unusual. Since creation, I have never wanted, needed or craved a mate. I made my children by simply thinking about them and I created them to fulfill their purposes in governing my realm. Naruto interrupted here, then why? Why, Lady Camy, do you want me? Camy offered a magnificent smile in return. Because you are pure of heart and strong in soul. Naruto sipped on tea for a bit to process that and calmed his mind. Okay, let's say we agree to do this. How would it work? Camy's smile radiated with joy and happiness. Well, unfortunately, you were absent for Morio's resurrection. The team Itachi sent failed without you there and the demon was resurrected. Shion offered her life to me in exchange for the destruction of Morio. Naruto blanched and paled at that. No, not Shion, she didn't deserve that. Camy's smile tempered and turned sad. Yes, that is true. I have offered her refuge in my realm. What I need you to know is that she is still alive in the mortal realm. Naruto cocked his head. How? Camy averted her eyes and looked sheepish. I have placed a piece of myself in her body. I wanted to see if you would be willing to date me. I have rules to follow, and she has already passed to the eternal plane. This was one loophole that I found that would enable our partnership. Naruto hung his head and looked pensive. Without knowing it, he offered a prayer to Camy to safeguard Shion's soul, which made the goddess across the table chuckle. Lady Camy, I don't really know you, why would you go so far for me? Camy remained patient with her chosen since she knew exactly where he was coming from and what he was thinking. Because, despite the odds, I have fallen in love with my chosen. I wish to see if it is possible for us to be together, and the mortal realm will provide a test run. Naruto sighed and resigned himself to his fate. Okay, fine. If you believe in me that much, then who am I to deny you? Can I ask? Camy answered his unasked question, if you ascend to godhood, your wives will be able to stay with you here in my, or maybe our, castle. Naruto felt a weight lifted from his soul and he looked up into the golden eyes of Camy. Put Shion in the VIP suite with her mom and I accept. I kind of feel guilty that I wasn't there for her and that you will be in her body. Camy nodded and snapped her fingers, done. So, what do you need me to do? Naruto asked. Camy chuckled, well, in Shion's body I will be mortal. I will not have my godly traits. It is kind of like you and your clones. I am simply placing a piece of myself in her body. You are not to let the others know that I am residing in there. I do not want to usurp their relationships and I don't want them treating me like, well, Camy. Naruto nodded, okay, well, how do I explain shooting down Koyuki and then accepting a new wife on the next mission? Camy felt a twinge of jealousy as the love-making scene played through her mind once more. Well, Sai, do you love the princess? Naruto shrugged, not really, I kept those feelings from reaching my heart. I know she has the seeds of love for me, and I could see it working if I allowed it though. Camy rested her chin on her hands in thought, well, your human rules for daimyos are obnoxious. I reviewed them and they said 5 wives. Minimum, which is absolutely ridiculous, by the way. Stupid human males. Naruto held his hands up, I can fight against that. I don't need or want 5 wives. I am happy with what I have. Camy cocked an eyebrow at him, does that include me? Naruto chuckled and rubbed the back of his neck sheepishly, yeah, I guess it does. Camy sighed somewhat shyly, Naruto, I am not coming to the mortal realm for you to treat me like a goddess. I am choosing to come to your realm to be your equal and see if our love is genuine enough to last for eternity. Naruto nodded, I get that. Sorry, it is a lot to take in knowing that of all your creation that I am the one you chose. Give me some time and I will get used to it. Camy crossed the table, sat in Naruto's lap and wrapped her arms around his neck. Unfortunately, Camy was still in her godly form, and this proved to be too much for Naruto. He passed out on the spot, which earned a chuckle from Camy. I still got it. Naruto regained consciousness as Camy kissed his forehead and he apologized. He leaned forward and captured the lips of Camy in a chaste kiss. He didn't pass out this time, but it was an overwhelming feeling to kiss the goddess of creation. I don't know what the future holds, but if you will have me, then I will give my all to make you happy. Camy smiled beneficently at Naruto, I know, Ruto, I know you will. Now, return to that council and tell them about our contract. I request that you decline this offer of marriage from Koyuki. If you find true love with her later in life, then we will discuss it with the girls. Also, accept the mission to Demon Country and come pick me up. With that, Camy placed a tender kiss on his lips and returned him to the council chambers. Naruto felt the whirring feeling sensation and opened his eyes back in the council chambers. He shook his head slightly and looked around the room at the faces of people he trusted. He firmed his resolve and spoke, well, Council of Konaha, I am in a contract with Camy, goddess of creation. He held up his hand and stopped the uproar. I am not joking, and I can prove it. I ask the members of this council to close your eyes and open your minds to me. It took a minute for the council to relent, and Naruto's golden sage mode was felt by every member of the council. He flashed memories of the end but kept those ones brief. He shared some of his interaction in the afterlife and the start of his contract with Camy. He showed what he came back to, and he shared some key events of his new life. The council was left in a stunned silence when their minds processed the information and the link ended. Naruto cleared his throat and a couple heads idly turned toward him, now you know, at least some of it. I was allowed to share these memories with you because I have changed this timeline so much that future knowledge is no longer relevant. Needless to say, you are not permitted to share this information and the price for breaching this celestial contract would be severe. A prolonged silence followed his words and Naruto's girls stepped into supportive positions behind him. They each knew something happened and it likely had to do with Camy because they each saw the brief disorientation he went through. Plus, Naruto had told them that he wouldn't be able to tell others the truth unless Camy said otherwise. Finally, Itachi regained his composure and shook his head in disbelief. Itachi coughed lightly and snapped the council out of its trance. Okay, well that certainly explains a lot and give us much to think about. Why did you share this with us now? Naruto shrugged. Camy pulled my mind to her realm and told me to. He kept his answer brief. She also mentioned that I should accept the mission too. Demon Country, so do you want to cover that now? Shikaku stood up and slammed his hands on the desk. You troublesome blonde. Don't think we will let you off that easy. What gave you the right to deceive the council and change things the way you saw fit? Shikaku was still clearly upset about the years wasted chasing the neighborhood watch. Naruto deadpanned at Shikaku while his girls giggled behind him. Did you miss the part about me being Camy's chosen? It all makes so much sense now, Hiyashi muttered. Unbelievable, Chusa followed up. My daughter just couldn't choose a simple man, Inoichi lamented. Makoto was crying since she saw that her son was the one to bring about the end of the world the last time around. She was also shocked by the fate of the Uchiha. Why? Naruto cocked his head at her. Why did you save my clan and my son this time around if he did that to you? Why did you return to Konaha at all after we betrayed you? Why? Naruto offered a sad smile and a slow nod in understanding. Because, despite it all, Konaha is my home. My parents gave their lives to protect this home. I thought that I should at least try to do the same. Naruto sighed after that. As for your clan, I wanted to try and avert disaster. I thought that if I saved Sasuke from that pain and hatred, then he wouldn't fall. Plus, it was just the right thing to do. Hiyashi was struggling with this information, and he asked Naruto, so, last time around, my clan didn't suffer this tragedy. Naruto prostrated himself to Hiyashi. It is one of my greatest regrets, Lord Hyuga. I tried to help your clan too early, and it had unforeseen consequences. I thought that if I saved Hinata and Hizashi, then Neji would have had a better life. He sacrificed himself to save my life and I owed at least that much to him. Then, I wanted to remove the caged bird seal and the way I went about it led to your clan's massacre. I never foresaw what happened and for that I sincerely apologize. Hiyashi should have known better than to be surprised by Naruto's display, but he was still taken aback. Rise, Naruto, you need not apologize to me. You have done much for my clan and your apology is wasted. Shikaku rose from his seat next to Itachi. Naruto, if you have the knowledge from another life, then you know and have known who the Akatsuki were this whole time. Why have you not shared that information? Naruto shook his head. I have shared what I know. I have shared what I can prove, and I have taken actions against them. I know this sounds unreasonable, but the restart of the timeline is Camy's experiment, of sorts. It had never been done before and she made me keep this information close to the chest. Everything I have shared, I have collected intelligence and proven to be the same. That being said, there were many things that were different, so why would I act like I still know everything? In fact, aside from the beginning, pretty much everything is different. Finally, I will remind you that I was contracted to Camy. Shikaku shook his head in frustration. No, that is a troublesome excuse. Naruto flared his aura. No, that is the reason. If 5-year-old me told you all that I knew events from the future, then what? I become your inside source of information and you use that for the benefit of Konaha. Either that or you think the Kyuubi scrambled my brain and was manipulating me. You did nothing in my past life to hold my trust. You did everything in this life to break it and I took the actions I saw fit. So, save me your frustrated chastising. I shared this with you so that you would understand what needs to happen, not rehash the past. Naruto's voice had raised but remained below a shout. It was clear to everyone that this was intensely personal. To Naruto, Shijimi stood up. Let's move on. The truth of the matter is that Naruto informed my husband of the relevant facts. He has worked with Kinji to make changes and it is undeniable that he has made this world a better place. So, I say again, let's move on. Itachi nodded. Very well, I agree. This issue is tabled. Now, the mission to Demon Country. The teams we sent there had fatalities and were critically injured. I wish for you to travel there and use the Hiraishin to transport medics and doctors to aid the injured. The princess also needs evaluation after she used a kinjutsu to eliminate the demon Morio rather than seal him. Her attendants claim that she has been quite different since the event. Of course she is different, she is a completely different person, Naruto thought before he bowed at the waist. I will set out first thing tomorrow morning. Very well, how quickly can you make that trip? Itachi asked. Am I traveling alone? Naruto returned the question. Itachi nodded, I figured that would be fastest. Are you concerned about that? Naruto shook his head in the negative, no, I will create a Hiraishin beacon and leave it there once I am done. I can make it there by tomorrow evening. Chusa chuckled loudly, a 3-day trip in less than a day. Why am I still surprised? Naruto shrugged, dunno, but if you don't think I can do it then I would be happy to bet on it. Chusa shook his hands in front of him, no, that is quite alright, Naruto. I don't feel like Chura's scolding me for needlessly throwing away money. This earned chuckles from the council, and it served to break the tension. Itachi stood up and pounded his gavel, this council meeting is now closed. I will remind everyone that the information concerning Naruto's contract is to be shared with nobody outside this council. Dismissed. Meeting a goddess in Demon Country. Tsunade walked home with the 4 lovers, and everyone settled down for a family dinner. Naruto shared what he could from his meeting with Camy, and the news stirred up the Senju Uzumaki household quite a bit. Once Naruto had finished, it was Tsunade that spoke up first. Brat, you are telling me that Camy pulled you up to her realm in the middle of a council meeting, told you to accept this mission and she wants you to wed the priestess of Demon Country. Tsunade shouted incredulously. Naruto nodded, Mama, it shocked me too, but I knew I had to share it with my family as soon as possible. Why? Temari asked while scanning Naruto with an analytical gaze. Naruto sighed, I don't know, Mari. If I knew, then I would tell you. You know that the daimyos are going to pressure me into their version of the CRA. I could avoid Konaha's imposition because of Kinji's influence. However, the laws of the daimyo are different and Kinji talked to me about it. Minimum for somebody in my circumstance is 5 and Camy asked me to decline Koyuki and accept an engagement period with Shien. Camy, brat, things are just weird with you. Tsunade sighed. Kurama laughed heartily, well, Haim, aren't you glad I am a one-woman man? While Tsunade shook her head, Ino stepped in, I love my sisters. If Camy-chan actually told Naruto to take one more, then I think we should at least give her a chance. After all, it was Camy that was so against Ruto taking another that he had to go through that. The whole family winced at the memories and Tsunade hung her head in guilt. Samui took the mic next, well, who are we to question Camy? Why don't we see if she is cool and then take it from there? Temari pouted, I once thought Ruto would be mine, and now he is ours. Gah, oh well, let's see the new girl. She threw her hands up before she slammed her head on the table in resignation. Naruto rubbed her back in understanding. I am sorry, Mari. I doesn't change a single thing about how much I love you. Kurama met Naruto's gaze and asked another question, so, Morio is dead, and you didn't have to do anything this time around. Why didn't they call for you? Naruto shrugged, I don't know. I wish they would have. My guess is they thought that Tenzo and his team would have been enough. Kurama scoffed and Chome buzzed agitatedly, that imitation Mokuden cannot handle a released demon much less a Biju. Sure, he can handle a couple tails from a Jinchuriki, but in terms of actual demons he wouldn't stand a chance. Tsunade sighed, yeah, if I would have known then I would have talked them out of it. Oh well, so, you will call me there tomorrow. Naruto nodded, I will move at full speed. Shouldn't take too long, but it is still a long way. Temari scoffed, 250 miles, a long way, in a single day. She shook her head in mock disbelief. Naruto chuckled, well, when you integrate better with Kokuo, you will be able to do it too. Whatever, you are being called to your husbandly duties. If this is the last night with just the 4 of us, then we should make the most of it. Ino said in a seductive tone. Samui flared to life at that, oh, yes. It is your duty. Now, come, stud muffin. After Naruto and his clones gave it to his wives as good as he got it, they fell into a restful sleep. He rose in the morning and brought breakfast in bed to his exhausted wives, and they ate together before Naruto took off for Demon Country. Naruto brought Chome along with him for this trip and experimented with using her yokai. He synced with her for the first time, and it was an exhilarating experience for the Queen of Insects. This is amazing, Ruto. Chome squealed in excitement from within the seal. It feels like I am the one running. Now, try channeling chakra between your shoulder blades and imagine 4 wings. Naruto was focused on his long-range leaps, and he decided to entertain Chome. He was already able to pull on 5 of her tails without stress, and he focused on directing her excitable chakra between his shoulder blades. After a minute of focusing, the wings sprouted on his back in mid-leap, and he lost his balance. A shaky and unsteady flight ensued before Naruto stabilized with the aid of wind chakra. Then, he created a draft behind him and flapped the wings. "This is amazing," Naruto screamed out loud while he soared through the sky. Camy relished the feeling of flying once more, and she agreed wholeheartedly with Naruto. "Yes, it feels great. Thank you for trusting me and integrating with me. I know you don't need me, but it feels warm and welcome within you." Naruto blushed at that, or maybe it was the wind blasting his cheeks. "Aw, shucks, Camy. You are always welcome with me." At that point, Naruto's tenketsu on his back burnt out and he began to fall from nearly half a kilometer in the air. He panicked for a minute before he remembered that he was a master with his wind affinity, and he slowed his descent with some wind. "Damn, next time tell me not to fly so high until we are more used to doing that." Camy clicked her pincers and chuckled in glee, "But that is part of the learning process, Ruto. Hee. Plus, I knew you would be okay." Naruto shot a cocked eyebrow at the biju within the seal. "You mischievous little." The trip to Demon Country included ample amounts of Chamy's yokai mixed with senjutsu chakra. The Sage mode increased his speed and recovery to astonishing levels, and he was able to make the trip in just over 10 hours. Naruto was sure it was some sort of world record, but he was just glad it was over. Even he had limits to his endurance, at least when he wasn't in a life or death situation. Naruto slowed down to a walk when he approached the shrine priestess's compound, and he wasn't surprised when he was made to halt and surrounded by guards and confronted by one of the Konaha Anbu. It was the Bear Mask, and Naruto nodded to him in greeting, which caused Bear to take charge. "Stand down, this is Lord Senju." Bear barked, which caused the guards to raise and shoulder their spears. "Welcome, Naruto. You sure made it here quickly." Naruto wiped some perspiration from his brow. "Yeah, I booked it the whole way." Status update. Bear stiffened slightly before speaking. Squad Tango lost 3 of 4. Cat is hurt and has some sort of shadow poisoning. Tenzo is in rough condition, and we are trying to save his arm. Eagle and I are fine, but we need reinforcements. Naruto nodded. "Got it, let me get inside and meditate to calm my chakra. I will flash back to Konaha and get the medical team. After I bring the medical team in, I will talk to the priestess." With that, Bear led Naruto into the compound and the guards resumed their posts. It was clear to Naruto that this place was attacked and that Tenzo had used some wood jutsu to plug up some defenses, but it would do little to hold off a proper shinobi team. He walked into the main building and was taken to the wounded Konaha Anbu. He sat down in a meditative position and focused on de-stressing his coils so that he could flash to Konaha and back. After 30 minutes, Tsunade, Hinata, Ino and another medic were flashed into the priestess compound. While the medics attended to the wounded, Naruto made his way to see Shien, or Camy. Well, she told him to call her Shien in this mortal form, so it is Shien then. Naruto shook the confusion out of his head, and he was led in to see Shien. He felt a twinge of excitement and anticipation crawl up his spine as he walked toward an ethereal blonde beauty that was sitting on her throne-like seat. As he walked and got closer, he noticed that instead of the violet eyes Shien had last time around, her irises were now golden. He also noticed that her bust was easily in the low to mid-D range, which was definitely an upgrade from what he remembered. Her face glowed with an ethereal beauty that should be foreign to humanity, and her smile made all of Naruto's worries melt away. Finally, he stopped 20 feet in front of the goddess in human form, where he knelt down on one knee and bowed his head. "Lady Shien, I am relieved to see you in good health. I have brought aid from Konaha, and they are tending to my shinobi as we speak." Naruto kept his head dipped and spoke in a reverent tone. "Leave us," Shien said in a firm and commanding tone, which earned protests from Taruho, Shien's attendant. "Lady Shien, we cannot leave you alone with a stranger you just met." Shien scoffed and waved him off with her dainty hands. "Relax, I have seen this man in my visions and trust him implicitly. Now, leave me." Naruto rose and watched the attendants scurry out of the chamber before Shien placed a hand on her throne and a privacy barrier was erected around the room. Naruto cocked an eyebrow at her and sent her a teasing smirk. "So, that was out of character," He held back a laugh as he addressed Camy, or at least this portion of Camy. Shion rose from her throne and strode down to Naruto in a slow and sensual manner. She stopped in front of him and looped her arms over his neck before stopping inches away from his lips. "Tell me, Ruto, does this human form appeal to you?" Naruto gulped, licked his lips and nodded slowly. "Yes, milady. Does my presence feel strange or wrong to you?" Shion proceeded. Naruto shook his head minimally. "No, milady." "Then why aren't you kissing me?" She finished in a sultry tone. This prompted Naruto to lean forward a couple inches and he placed a tender kiss on her lips before he pulled back. The two locked eyes once more and then their lips crashed together, and tongues flashed in a sensual dance. This continued for a long, yet seemingly appropriate, amount of time, and it was as if Naruto knew this woman implicitly. He felt at home with her in his arms and her taste excited and inspired him. Shion broke the kiss and her eyes twinkled in pleasure and excitement. "It is good to see you in the mortal realm, my chosen. Do you choose me as well?" Naruto nodded dumbly, as if in a trance before he snapped out of it and offered a sincere smile. "Why don't we take our time getting to know one another? It feels right, but I don't want to rush it. I want to take you out, play 20 questions, get to know you, laugh, cry and love with you. Let's enjoy this life we have together and then you can tell me if you want to spend eternity with me by your side." Shion slapped him playfully on his chest. "Geez, Ruto, such a romantic. It feels good hearing you say that to me. I think that sounds like a good plan. So, how do we play this?" Naruto chuckled. "Well, I told my girls that Camy told me to bring you home. So, I guess we just need to convince your people that is what you want. I mean, between the Hiraishin and communication scrolls, there is no real reason for you to stay here anyway." "Oh, yay, I will tell them it was love at first sight. That will be fun." Shion schemed excitedly while still in Naruto's embrace. Naruto laughed and shook his head. "Whatever makes you happy, milady." Shion shot a pouty look at Naruto. "What? So, you will act with the Snow Princess, but not with me?" Naruto shrugged and sighed. "I'm sorry, milady. I don't know what you have in mind, but I am willing to go along with it. To be honest, the first thing you should do is meet Mama, Hinata and Ino. I brought them here to help heal the injured." Shion squealed excitedly and linked arms with Naruto. "Okay, well, lead the way." Naruto shook his head. "No wonder they asked us to evaluate you. You act completely different than the Shion I remember." Shion swatted his shoulder playfully. "Oh, please, I am the goddess of creation. Broody, depressed and isolated doesn't fit my style." Up in Camy's realm, Minato had to duck a paperweight thrown by Camy's godly form when he coughed abruptly at hearing that. This earned a fit of giggles from Kushina and the three got back to work while paying attention to the screen. Naruto chuckled. "Yeah, I guess not. I like your positive attitude and energy though." Naruto continued to chat with Shion as they walked into the room that held the injured Konaha ninja. Tsunade and Hinata were in the middle of extracting the shadow poison from Kat and it seemed like it was an intense procedure. Tenzo's arm was already healed up and Ino was finalizing the bandages on that when she looked up to see Naruto walk into the room with Shion on his arm. She cocked her head and squinted her eyes in confusion. "Ruto, already acting chummy with the princess?" Ino asked. Naruto shrugged. "Well, I guess you could say we have known each other for a while." She remembered. This statement caused three of the most important women in his life to pause abruptly and look between Shion and Naruto. "Brat, we will talk about that later. Shion, it is nice to meet you, sweetie. We are almost ready to transport, Ruto," Tsunade said while wiping some sweat from her brow. "Gotcha, mama. I just wanted to introduce y'all before I got her packed up." Naruto answered back. Taruho barged into the conversation here. "What do you mean packed up?" Shion scoffed. "Relax, Taruho, I am going to Konaha with Naruto. Now that Morio is vanquished, I will be exploring the world with Naruto. If there is anything you need, you can contact me via communication scroll." "Lady Shion, you can't leave us," Taruho said despondently. Shion cocked an eyebrow. "As the chief priestess, my duty here was ensuring the integrity of Morio's seal and to reseal him when the time came. I have accomplished my task and I wish to enjoy life now. When I spoke with Lady Camy, she told me to go with the one she sent to me. So, I am going." Shion ended forcefully. Taruho hung his head and Tsunade shook hers. Leave it to her brat to get wrapped up in something like this. Tsunade locked eyes with Naruto. And you're okay with this? Naruto nodded with a smile on his face. Yeah, it feels right. I told her that she would have to get to know my wives before I committed to anything. Tsunade snapped back to her work before responding, okay, then go get her packed up. We will be ready to go within the hour. Naruto went with the human form of Camy and went through her room. He watched in amusement as Shion threw out most of her wardrobe and said there was no need to bring priestess robes. She made silly comments about how humans always put too much emphasis on their robes and gowns when worshipping the gods and practicing holiness. It took 45 minutes for Naruto's clone squad to pack up the room, and he was pleased to see that Shion didn't bring too many things with her. They returned to the impromptu medical bay and found that the wounded were already in stasis scrolls, the dead bodies were in body scrolls, and the medics were ready to return. Naruto flashed into GSM and transported the group to the Hokage's office. When they entered the office, Itachi simply shook his head. I give you a mission that should have taken a week and you were back within the same day. Report. Itachi ordered. Tenzo stepped up. Lord Hokage, we arrived after Lady Shion's compound was assaulted by 4 shinobi that had skills with shadows that we have never encountered before. They were able to rebuff the assault, but Shion felt Morio being released from his seal. We set out for the sealing shrine and found that there were 500 stone statues that were animated by Morio. The demon itself was also recently freed when we arrived at the temple. Squads Ro and Tango engaged the stone army and the demon. I attempted to immobilize the demon and allow the priestess to go through her sealing ritual. The demon broke through my Mokuton, and that was when we took our losses. I used one more Mokuton jutsu and Lady Shion was able to vanquish Morio. We took heavy casualties and remained at Shion's compound until Naruto arrived. Itachi was frowning as he nodded along. Very well. Lady Shion, is the demon Morio truly vanquished, or should we expect it to return? Shion stepped forward. Lord Hokage, the demon is truly vanquished. There is no chance it will return. I offered my soul to Camy in exchange for vanquishing the demon. It was at that time that Lady Camy told me to return to Naruto. It was extremely awkward for the goddess of creation to refer to herself in the third person, but she pushed through with a smile on her face. Itachi's gaze turned to Naruto, and you are okay with this? Naruto shrugged. It is the will of Camy, and I am Camy's chosen. I trust her, and there are worse things than becoming friends with a beautiful young woman such as Shion. Ino scoffed. Friends, huh? Shion had the decency to blush, and Naruto adopted his sheepish pose. Ino, I told Shion that she would have to get to know you girls first. She accepted those terms, so I guess I just ask you to give her a chance. Hinata giggled before the sleeve of her jacket. Oh, Ruto, you just can't stop yourself. Naruto cocked his head. What you mean, Hinaheim? Hinata's giggle turned into a full-blown laugh at the looks on Ino and Tsunade's faces. Well, my friend, every time you go on a mission, it seems like there is a girl that falls in love with you. Naruto held up his hands in a gesture of innocence. Well, I can claim innocence on this one. If you want to blame anyone, blame Camy. Shion giggled at that. Naruto is right. This was solely due to Camy. All I ask is the opportunity to get to know Naruto and you three. Ino relented at the pure and innocent look on Shion's face, and Tsunade settled with crossing her arms under her bust. Okay, Shion, I can do that. I am sure Temari and Samui will agree to a trial run as well. Itachi coughed and returned the attention to himself. Tsunade, what of the injured? They are sealed in medical stasis scrolls. I didn't want to strain their bodies with the Hiraishin. I will get them set up in the hospital once leave here. Nothing I can do for the dead, but the injured will survive. Tsunade said professionally. Very well, Naruto, please report here at 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. Tsunade, if you are free, please accompany him. Itachi said before dismissing them. That night, Shion got the chance to meet Temari, Samui and the Senju family, which led to drinks in the Senju gardens. It was pretty much a Senju family tradition at this point, and everyone was excited to grill the newcomer in the Senju household. It was Rias, who had Anko and Yugito in each arm, that opened the questioning. Okay, priestess, why did you so readily agree to this crazy plan of Camy? Her tone was challenging and teasing at the same time. Shion blushed and cuddled into her first Naruto clone. Well, let's just say that when I made the deal with Camy, she gave me the memories of his past life. We had a much more intimate experience last time and the war stopped us from ever getting together. When she asked me to care for her chosen, I saw no reason to refuse. Yami stepped up next before Tayuya could enter the conversation. Okay, that's all well and good, but what made you think that Naruto would just go along with it? Shion deadpanned at Yami, I am a priestess gifted with visions of the future. Plus, Naruto is Lady Camy's chosen, so I trusted in my god. Tayuya slammed a saucer and said, well, ain't that a fucking fairy tale? You are Camy's faithful little girl, and she rewards you by dropping shithead in your lap. What do you three cunts think about this? She looked around at Ino, Samui and Temari before she paled as a Naruto would clone formed with a water whip in hand. Stand to for punishment, Tayuya. The clone growled and cracked its whip menacingly. Yami took his arm from her shoulder, knowing full well that he couldn't prevent what was going to happen. As the clone chased her, the group chuckled and played a drinking game. They each chose one of Tayuya's favorite curse words. Each time she used that particular curse, the person could assign a drink. This proved to be a way for the Senju family to get rapidly intoxicated because the full-mouthed redhead never learned to zip her lips. Fucking cunty bastard. Tayuya echoed across the Senju compound and pretty much everyone ended up drinking. Ow. You carpet munching, ass grabbing, ow. Bastardized wooden fucking monstrosity of shithead. Ow. 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 The Senju family looked around before they all shrugged and simply started taking pulls from their bottles. 10 minutes later, Tayuya limped back into the gazebo, and she huffed as she blew one of her bangs out of her face. I fucking hate you, shithead. Naruto shrugged, if you ever learned your lesson. Then maybe we wouldn't get so drunk, hick. Samui finished the statement. Ino giggled with a blush. On her cheeks, back to Shion, are you okay sharing Ruto? We share in all things and there are no head wives or any of that BS. Shion nodded with a silly smile on her face. Yes, I can't say that I have any experience, but the thought of gaining 3 sisters sounds amazing. Hikari laughed innocently before cuddling into a passed-out Shikamaru. The guy couldn't hold his liquor. And, are you okay with kissing girls? Shion blushed brilliantly and the thought of Camy blushing like that made Naruto break into a full-blown laugh. Shion swatted him playfully on the chest before answering the question, I think so. I will have to let you know after I try. I would like to get to know the first before I do anything like that though. She added as Ino was rising to come and claim Shion's first lesbian kiss. Ino sighed and sat back down on her clone's lap. Tsunade decided to get her questions in. Do you have any reservations about this? It is one thing to serve Camy. It is another thing completely to give yourself to a man because Camy told you to. Shion beamed a brilliant smile at Tsunade. No, mama, I am content with this. I am grateful to Camy for placing such a wonderful man in my life. I am also grateful that he comes with a big family. I always wanted a big family, but my father died when I was young, and my mother passed not long after that. Yugito raised a saucer to Shion. Welcome to the madness, girly. To the madness. Everyone cheered and downed their saucers. 5 Kage Summit, it's a trap. Naruto and Tsunade reported to Itachi's office the next morning as requested and Itachi was amused to see that they were both hungover. Kurama was so hungover that he retreated into the seal when the sun stung his eyes. Chome was immune to most toxins, so she was just fine, but she wanted to be in on this conversation, so she was in the seal as well. Itachi looked up as they entered the office, and he pushed aside the papers he was working on. Thank you for coming. Please take a look at this. Itachi said as he handed a scroll to Tsunade. Naruto looked over her shoulder and read it with her. Tsunade scoffed, Itachi, you can't honestly be thinking about going to this. It's clearly a trap. Naruto agreed. Itachi sighed, yes, that is the common sentiment. The other Kage also got the invitation, and they said the same thing. Naruto cocked an eyebrow, so, why are you still thinking about going? Because they don't know how truly strong you are. This could be a chance for a decisive battle, but it all comes down to what you can do. Itachi answered while analyzing Naruto. Naruto closed his eyes and thought about it. He roused Kurama and Chome to see what they thought about it. After a minute, he opened his eyes and looked firmly at Itachi. Well, the way I see it, Iwa is trying to drag us into the open. They requested that I be there, so it is clearly a trap, and they most likely believe that they have something ready for me. Itachi nodded. I was thinking the same thing. Naruto put a hand to his chin in thought while Tsunade responded, Itachi, I want them dealt with, but this would be willingly taking a fight on their terms. What if it wasn't on their terms? I know that they could turn this into a trap in any number of ways, but what if we weren't as isolated as they thought? Naruto said, still thinking about this. Explain. Itachi said, summoning seals. We get the elite from every ally and have them on standby. If things go pear-shaped, which is likely, then we summon in reinforcements. Naruto answered, still in a calculative tone. Ruto, they have aim, Iwa, Pain, Konan, the fake Madara, Kakuzu, Kisame, Zetsu and all of the white Zetsus, that is an overwhelming force. Tsunade warned. Naruto nodded, we took that white Zetsu body at the beginning of our training trip. We developed a countermeasure for his mimicking jutsu, and we will be able to identify him. Each Zetsu is only a low to mid Chunin skill level at best. The only thing they had over us last time around was the confusion they sowed in the ranks. Itachi had been included on the intelligence concerning the white Zetsu clones and it worried him greatly. What is the counter we have? Naruto answered, I can cast a wide-scale jutsu that pollinates the air and they will react to it, which will disrupt any transformation they attempt. If that's not enough, any of my clones can identify them. Any decent earth jutsu user can prevent them from traveling underground. What about the S ranks? Tsunade asked. Pain and Konan will come for me. That is the most likely. The Uchiha can't stand up to me at this point. Kisame is a non-issue, Kakuzu is a threat but I know how to deal with him. Zetsu is a scout and will just sow chaos. Naruto answered while still clearly thinking things through. That still leaves 15,000 shinobi of AIM and Iwa. AIM shinobi are religious zealots and Iwa is motivated by blind revenge. Itachi cautioned. Iron Country is also closest to Iwa. They would be able to move their forces first. Tsunade added. Naruto sighed, look, it is clearly stacked against us. I have no doubts that I could stall and erect a barrier, but they can siege, flee or do any number of things. What is the worst-case scenario, Naruto? Itachi asked bluntly. They have all of the Akatsuki there, they trap the tower, find a way to disable my Hiraishin, summon the Geto Mazo, which would mean fighting against the 3 and 6 tails. Plus, they have Roshi. So, let's say the worst-case scenario is 3 Biju, 4 S ranks, 2 SS ranks, 15,000 shinobi and 5 to 10,000 white Zetsu. Naruto answered in monotone. We only have a week. If we don't accept, then they claim they will declare war. War would mean the involvement of innocents. Itachi added. And Kinji would like to avoid that for obvious reasons. Naruto nodded, I understand that. Message the Kage and tell them to come here. We should talk this out with them. I will start thinking up strategies that could let us turn the tables. Okay, get with the Naris then. I will request a meeting for tomorrow morning. Itachi closed the meeting with that and set to the task of gathering his allies. After a long night poring over maps, plans, scenarios and many other things with Shikaku and Shikamaru, Naruto returned to his bed at 2 a.m. He snuggled into his girls and closed his eyes. The next day, he gave a basic breakdown to the Senju family, which included the Wave Branch. Everyone was concerned, but Naruto said he would be back after the meeting with the Kage. Naruto and Tsunade walked into the council chambers which had been rearranged with a circular table. Each Kage was allowed 3 advisors' bodyguards. This led to a full room with Raza, Gaara, Kankuro and Baki from Suna. Mei brought Ao, Chojuro and Zabuza with her from Kiri. I brought B, Yugito and Darui with him from Kumo. Yosuke brought Kaisa from Wave, which was allowed because Wave was a trade partner with Kumo and Kiri. From Konaha, there was Itachi, Shikaku, Tsunade and Naruto. Once everyone took their seats, Itachi began. Thank you for coming on such short notice. We have been working together for a short time and I know that the alliance is still young. I called you here today because this is a clear invitation from the Akatsuki for a decisive battle. I wanted to hear your thoughts and pitch some ideas at this meeting. Itachi began formally. I, ever the impulsive one when battle was involved, stood next. Kumo stands ready to take the fight to the Akatsuki. May stood next. My nation is still recovering from our prolonged civil war. I am hesitant to engage in such a war, especially when my Biju have already been taken. Raza stood up. Lady Mizukage, I understand why you are hesitant, but this isn't the kind of threat the world can ignore. Before anyone else could speak, Naruto stood and looked calmly around the room. After a couple moments, he spoke, I have worked with each of you, and I have grown to cherish the bonds I have with you. I have not shared what I am about to share with many people, but I believe it necessary at this point so that you may understand the gravity of the situation. Naruto took a deep breath and Tsunade placed a calming hand on his shoulder. This is not my first life. This war with the Akatsuki led to the end of all life in the world last time around. Naruto held up his hands to stifle the incredulous protests. I am going to enter Sage mode. I ask that anything I share with you is kept in this room. I do not need the whole world knowing this information. A stunned silence followed Naruto's words, but it was Raza's chuckles that broke everyone from their disbelief. He was shaking his head and his chuckling was breaking into full fits of laughter. Everyone waited for him to let them in on the joke. Raza recomposed himself and stood up. I apologize, fellow Kage. It all makes so much sense now. For those that don't know, Naruto came to Suna when he was still 5 years old. He altered Gaara's seal and began helping my people through creative use of seals. It was always difficult for me to swallow that a child could make such an impact on my nation. That was why I was laughing. I grunted, so, that is how you knew so much. Naruto nodded. Mate turned her head, could you please explain more? Naruto nodded slowly, please close your eyes and open your minds to me. I am going to enter my sage mode to share some relevant information. He waited until he felt the tensions in the room ease, and he embraced the silence that fell over the room. Naruto clapped his hands together and closed his eyes. He flashed into GSM and shared visions of the Fourth Great Shinobi War. He shared visions of his fight with Madara and Obito and the Shinju tree. He shared the resurrection of Kage and the intense fight that followed. He shared visions of the Jubi and the destruction it wrought. Then, he ended with his last memory of him tied on a cross and the Jubi laying waste to the world. Jaws were dropped, eyes were popping, and a gobsmacked silence hung in the room. I shared these specific memories because I don't want to get into what I should and shouldn't have changed. I wanted you to know what we are up against. I wanted you to know what was at stake. Naruto began. Itachi, who was more familiar with Naruto's past, spoke up. Fellow Kage, if we leave such an enemy to stew in the shadows, then we will surely come to regret it. My strategist worked with Naruto to come up with a plan for this summit, if Akatsuki, Iwa and AIM should make their move. I snapped out of it and looked between Naruto and Itachi. I trust your power, brat. I don't know about stepping into such a trap though. Naruto nodded, I can understand that. To be honest, I have my reservations as well. Then why do we let them choose the battleground? May asked what was on many minds. To minimize collateral damage. Naruto answered. Raza frowned but nodded, yes, if we do not take this shot, then it is likely that our civilian populations will be affected. That would have many downstream effects. I punched a hand into his palm. Let's hear what you have come up with and we will make our decision from there. Shikaku Nara rose and bowed to the Kage. We only had one night to plan, so there are probably some kinks we could iron out in this plan. To start, we would all teleport to Kumogakure and we would move down to the summit together. That would, or at least should, prevent any ambushes en route to the summit. Won't that put Iwa even more on edge? May pointed out in question form. They are already our enemies. We have confirmed that Akatsuki is directing Iwa. What you don't know is that it was a member of the Akatsuki that broke into our political prison and rescued the Tsuchikage's daughter. That is why we have disabled all spatial jutsus in our village with our barrier core. Itachi chimed in. I growled, well, I think we are beyond the point of settling this with talks. Part of me doesn't blame them after what Naruto did to their Jinchuriki and Kage, but still. If the Akatsuki is inviting us to a fight, I will take it. That being said, what is the next part of your plan? Naruto stepped up, since he was the Fuinjutsu master. Next, we have our elite squads on standby for reverse summoning. I modeled it after the summoning contracts of the animal clans, and we can instantly bring our forces in to join us. It is likely that the Rinnegan wielder will be there, and it will be my job to deal with him. I would say that I am enough to deal with Conan and Pain, but it will be a fight for sure. Raza sighed. Ruto, why put yourself in such a fight? You are their main objective, along with the other Jinchuriki, why not leave that fight to the Kage? Because I know the Rinnegan's abilities, and I bested him once before when I was far weaker than I am now. We contemplated that, but then we would be missing some of our strongest shinobi when countering the vast number of enemies we expect. Naruto answered. I snarled, okay, then where did you plan for the Kage to fight? Naruto nodded at that. I want you to take on Kisame Hoshigaki. You are king in single combat, and I have disabled his sword Samahata. Your lightning will counter his water jutsu and he shouldn't be able to keep up with your speed. Raza, Gaara, Killer Bee, Mei and Yugito will be on crowd control. You will hold the enemy back until our reinforcements arrive. Mei asked another tentative question, Naruto, why would we just bring in a portion of our forces? Even if we have them vastly outclassed in quality, those numbers would make it nearly impossible to deal with our enemy. Shikaku addressed that question. That is why we will mobilize our forces and quietly move them to our borders near Iron Country. We have our elites hold out until our main forces can pincer them. Itachi pitched in here. The most difficult part of this task would be mobilizing without the Akatsuki catching wind. I recommend sending more squads than usual out on border patrol and issuing quiet order to the squad captains. They have an effective information network, and we don't want them to know until it is too late. This whole plan is based on them thinking that they have the upper hand. Raza groaned, which earned attention from the council. If we do this, won't that eliminate our relationships with Mifune? We all get most of our chakra metal from Iron Country. Naruto fielded this one. I think that Mifune is probably under Akatsuki's control. I will be able to sense that when I am near him, and I should be able to break that control. That being said, I don't know what other traps they would have prepared. For that reason, I recommend we all send shadow clones into the meeting until the building itself is clear. I grunted, Naruto, that is a Konaha jutsu. We don't know it. Naruto pulled several copies of the jutsu scroll out of his pocket. I presume elite shinobi will be able to master this jutsu within a week. Naruto put extra emphasis on the cocked eyebrow he shot at I chuckled and snatched the scroll up. Very well. Naruto handed out the scrolls and continued his plan. Alright, so, we set up in the hotel for the first night. We set up privacy barriers on our hotel rooms and I will equip them with chakra screens. We send our clones into the meeting and if they notice anything off, then they can dispel and inform us. How would we know about the trap if they dispel? Mei asked. Naruto chuckled, because this jutsu is the key to my strength. There is a memory transfer component to the jutsu, and any non-physical memory will be transferred to the original when dispelled. Before you go overboard, I recommend reading the cautions and potential side effects before you perform the jutsu. Everyone took a moment to think about the potential of such jutsu before they snapped back into professional mode. Kaisa stood up. What part would you have wave play in this? Tsunade intervened. We do not need your forces. We will need you to prepare your ports and if war breaks out, then we will need a transport hub. Kaisa nodded. It will be done. The people of Wave stand behind the alliance. I let out a pleased sigh. That will help in troop movements. Lord Nara, if we fail to eliminate the Akatsuki in this battle, what is your projected outcome? Shikaku sighed and mumbled troublesome under his breath. He then looked up and addressed the council. I don't think the Akatsuki will go all in here. I think they will absolutely try to hit and cripple us. That being said, if they fail and are able to retreat, then they would get desperate. We couldn't begin to plan out worst-case scenarios, but we did come to one conclusion. Shikaku paused here and looked at Naruto, who gave him a nod. If we fail to eliminate the Zetsu, then they could easily begin targeting smaller villages and civilian populations. With their transformation abilities, that could go wrong in any number of ways. This earned rumblings around the table for the first time during the meeting, but it was Mei that took charge for the first time rather than questioning things. That won't be a problem. If the worst case happens, we inform the daimyo immediately and they can pull the civilians into the capitals. Naruto could set up protective barriers and screening seals around the capitals. That would be a short-term solution. Raza nodded. That will be easy in my country. Suna is already protected by those seals and your hidden villages already have the basic versions. Honestly, if it comes to that, then we unite the whole world, even the civilian populations, against the Akatsuki. I barked out a laugh. Yeah, well, if you asked me if 4 of the Great Five would ever work together in my lifetime, then I would have laughed you out of my tower. They have united us against a common enemy and evidently behind the man that was chosen by Camy. So, bring it on. I rose to his feet and smashed his fists together. That night, at the Senju compound, Naruto let everyone know what the plan was. Of course, his girls insisted on being part of the fight. Naruto didn't want this, but he couldn't refuse them. They were each among the strongest in Konaha and they were equally as stubborn. That being said, Yami was assigned guard duty, Rias, Hikari and Shion were on kid duty and the rest of the Senju family was getting ready to kick some ass. Iron Country, Gokage Summit. Itachi, Mei, I and Raza led their contingents through Lightning Country to the port and across the seas to Iron Country. It was a couple hours by ship and the entourage of 4 nations was tense as they endured the journey across the seas. Naruto was checking and rechecking the pre-prepared seals he had, which include 4 of the reverse summoning seals that could each bring in 50 shinobi. He also had strong barrier tags that he would give out to the people that were assigned to hold down the fallback location. He had overstocked on stasis seals, explosive tags and he had some blank tags ready for him to adapt on the fly. Naruto chose to set on the prow of the ship and let the sea breeze and droplets of water soak his face. He tried to steady his mind and think about the struggle to come. The battle with Nagato last time around was absolutely crippling. He was man enough to admit that he had held on by the skin of his teeth, a miracle from Camy and a preponderance of luck. As he was thinking things through, a red-haired beauty took a seat and sat silently next to him, at least for a little while. After a couple minutes, Mei leaned into Naruto and rested her head on his shoulder. So, you let me down easy and then go and find yourself a sweetheart in Kumo, Naruto chuckled sheepishly, I don't know what to tell you. Samui was a good friend and when we visited Kumo, well, old feelings resurfaced. I denied them and let her down at first. And, Mei said in a slow and drawn-out sensual tone. Well, my girls strapped me to the bed and kinda made the decision for me. Then, well, I guess it stuck because she got pregnant and now, I love her as my own. Naruto said passionately. Mei chuckled in a sexy manner, Era, you so brazenly tell me you had a foursome. Naruto leaned his head into Mei's, I have now had many foursomes, he said in a husky manner just to razz her. Mei swatted his shoulder, but kept her head pressed to his. Well, what is this I hear about a priestess from Demon Country joining the bunch? Naruto sighed and shrugged, a request from Camy. Mei leaned off of his shoulder and cast an analytical gaze his way. No, I am not kidding. Look, Mei, I maintain that you're an exquisite woman, but I am not looking for more. Plus, what's going on with you and Guy? Mei giggled, oh, Guy is a great man. Things are going well, and I am happy. I just wanted to ruffle your feathers a bit. Get in line, sweetheart. There are a lot of people that take great pleasure in ruffling my feathers. Naruto shot back. Mei let Naruto wrap an arm around her and she pressed the next big red button. So, when can I see the snow or spring princess in your book? I heard a scandalous rumor that there is a steamy scene in there that may or may not involve you. Yup, they made my book into a movie and hired me as an actor. I think it turned out well, but I am new to acting so I wouldn't expect too much. Wait. Mei exclaimed as she pulled a red book out of her bust. You are the author of Second Chance. Naruto nodded, yup, I published it after I left Kiri. Mei glommed onto him fully and put on her puppy dog eyes, please sign my book. Naruto plucked the still warm book out of her hands and wrote a sexy message, to Mei Terumi, the Crimson Temptress, I hope you enjoy my book, and I will love you always, NU Kitsune. Mei took the red book back with reverence and read the message with a sly smile on her face. She leaned up and placed a kiss on his cheek that left red lips from her lipstick. Thanks, Ruto. Any chance I will appear in your books. Just wait for the 3rd book. You are already in it. Naruto said while tickling her sides. Mei giggled from the tickling and out of excitement. Thanks, Ruto. You are a great man and I look forward to the rest of my life with you in it. For the rest of the journey, Naruto was in his golden sage mode, and he was feeling out his surroundings. He was more in tune with the ocean and water domains, but his range was significantly reduced on the seas. When he had time, he really needed to spend time on the ocean to master this domain, but that was for another time. As he meditated on the prow of the ship, Gaara, Raza and Tsunade showed up. Tsunade placed a comforting hand on his shoulder and spoke softly. "Relax, Ruto. You are not in this alone and this is not on your shoulders alone." Naruto cracked his eyes open, and his hand slid over Tsunade's own and gave it a soft squeeze. The tingle of the potent natural energy resonated and crackled against Tsunade's skin before Naruto replied. "I know, Mama, but these are all some of the most important people in my life and they are risking their lives to follow my plan." Tsunade offered a sad smile to Naruto. "I know, kiddo. For what it is worth, I trust you. I trust you as well, brother." Gaara added in a softer tone. "Same here, Bubba. If I die tomorrow, I will die a happy man knowing that my family and Suna are in good hands." Raza contributed. Naruto rose to his feet faster than most could process, and dope slapped Raza. When the Kage shot an incredulous look at Naruto, he exclaimed. "No. No fucking death flags. You idiot, tempting fate like some dumbass." This caused Tsunade to bark out a laugh and Gaara chuckled at the sheepish look on his father's face. Gaara took control of the conversation. "Father, the prosthetic is new, are you sure it is wise to put yourself in the battle?" This drew attentive looks from Tsunade and Naruto. Raza sighed, "I am not going to lie to you, I am not at 100%. That being said, I am more than enough to deal with your average shinobi or plant creature." Gaara put a hand on his father's shoulder. "I will be there with you. Plus, sister will join us, and it will get steamy." Naruto guffawed at that. Did Gaara just make a joke? "Oh, Camy, that was rich. That being said, just make sure to stand behind her when you see her fan glow blue." Tsunade smiled at seeing Naruto's tension broken. She wrapped him in a hug and Naruto whispered in her ear. "Mama, I can feel it. Congratulations. That being said, don't do anything stupid or Q will lose it and I don't know if I would be able to stop him." Tsunade snuggled into the hug. "I knew you would feel it. Can you let him out so I can share the good news?" Kurama's chakra flared around Naruto and formed into a wood clone. Kurama immediately wrapped Tsunade in a tender hug and spun her around. This drew looks from everyone on the boat and they watched the tender scene between a redhead they didn't know and the slug princess. Kurama fell to his knees and kissed Tsunade's still-toned stomach before he focused yokai to his hands and placed the glowing palms under Tsunade's shirt and over her belly. "Lady Camy, I know you are listening. Thank you for this blessing. Take my strength and pass it to the ones I love. Carry them in your embrace and cradle them in your hands." Kurama whispered before he kissed Tsunade's belly once more. Tsunade dragged Kurama up by his chin and placed a passionate kiss on his lips. "Take care of my brat. I will be fine." Kurama looked at Tsunade with tender concern painted on his face. "Haim, please don't overextend. I know better than to try and stop you, but please be careful. Take my chakra, it will link us for the time being." Tsunade nodded and Kurama placed his hands over Tsunade's heart before red chakra channeled into the slug princess, which caused the wood clone to dissolve. Inside the seal, Kurama spoke up. "Kit, can you feel her more clearly now?" Naruto nodded and thought back. "Sure can, Q. She is like a beacon now. If she is in trouble, I will get to her." Tsunade grabbed Naruto by his cheeks. "Look, brat, when you are in your fight you focus on your fight alone. Even with your current strength, pain is still a threat." Naruto offered an understanding smile. "I know, Mama. I will be fine." That night, the Kage were escorted by Iron Samurai from the port and into Iron Country's capital, which was near the fort they would be meeting at. Naruto spread his senses and he was not surprised to feel Iwa was in an inn across the village and he felt at least 50 of them in that hotel. Those numbers wouldn't pose a threat to anyone he brought with. Spreading his senses, he looked around Iron Country and was happy to say that he couldn't feel any reinforcements in the area. He slept lightly and kept his senses about him. He felt as if he were in the belly of the beast and the peaceful country he fell asleep to last night now had a tension hanging in the air. Due to this, Naruto was up at 4 a.m. and he cleared his mind to feel out the country once more. He trusted his instincts, he trusted his connection to nature and nature felt like there was a dense static in the air. This feeling made it nearly impossible for Naruto to ease his nerves, and he needed to figure out what was causing it. As he entered GSM, he checked on his allies around the village, and they were still resting peacefully, except for the Kage. He could feel that they were awake now and preparing themselves. He spread his senses and checked on the Iwa and Ain contingents in the other inn. Oh, that was new, Ain was here now. That took the total of hostile signatures from 50 to 75. Putting the nearby enemies aside, he spread his chakra through the air and ground. He felt hundreds of samurai that were patrolling the area. He felt their tension, and he knew that any experienced warrior would be able to feel battle coming. While Naruto couldn't detect an actual enemy presence within the borders of Iron Country, that didn't mean the situation couldn't change. The border between Iwa and Iron Country was less than 50 miles. The border of Ain was 85 miles. That meant that during the meeting, this could change rapidly. The allied Kage met in the restaurant that was within the inn and conducted their morning meeting. Everyone's eyes were hardened and steeled. They each knew something wasn't right, and after Naruto set up the privacy barrier, it didn't take long for them to voice their thoughts. Naruto, this is definitely a trap. Tension in the air this morning is thicker than at any point during the Third Great War. I growled. Raza nodded. Indeed, it is quite menacing. I sensed throughout Iron Country, and I couldn't feel any shinobi within the borders. That being said, there are ways around my sensing. There are transportation techniques, barrier techniques, and any other number of possibilities. Naruto said wearily. The one thing I can say for sure is that the natural energy feels off, like the earth knows something big is coming. I chuckled abruptly. If I didn't know you, I would have said that you were spouting nonsense. That being said, if you feel that way, then there is no doubt that this is an ambush. Itachi nodded. Indeed, I think we go with the clone plan. We cannot let them continue to dictate terms. We should also set up the summoning seals. Pretty much everyone agrees that a fight is coming. While our clones are in the meeting, we should set the stage for battle. Mei said in a tone she hadn't used since the Bloodline Wars. Raza seconded that motion. I agree. Gloves are off and there is no need to play fair anymore. Naruto stepped in here. Okay, well, let's get the clones out. I will place chakra masking seals on them, make sure that they are dressed in real clothes. Naruto had explained that this was to prevent too much suspicion, since he knew that shadow clones could be detected by dojutsu or people that knew what they were looking for. The seals he developed would make it impossible to distinguish between real and clone. I growled, if we all agree that a fight is coming, then why don't we just throw the first punch? Because we are in Iron Country, Lord Raikage. If we attack without provocation, then the fault will fall on us. Itachi said calmly. I grunted and Mei spoke up. I agree with Itachi. This is the best way to go about it. Plus, the fact that Mifune didn't greet us in person tells me that something is wrong. Naruto stepped in here. I didn't want to add to things, but that is a massive red flag. I remember Mifune, and he would never let leaders into his village without greeting them in person. I suspect he is under the Akatsuki's control. Itachi, do you have a way to break someone afflicted by the Koto Amatsukami? Itachi shook his head in the negative. I cannot, however, my mother and Shisui can. If things spiral out of control, we can incapacitate Mifune and we will free him of the influence later. Once he returns to his senses, he will undoubtedly side with us. Naruto clicked his teeth before locking eyes with each Kage around the table. Alright, clones out, eyes up and stay sharp. This inn is a safe zone, everything outside is hostile. If clones get dispelled, we will move to the port and put the sea at our back. I will Hiraishin Darui, Chojuro and Konkuro back to the ship. We will quietly take over the port and set up the summoning seals. The rest will remain here and wait for the memories of the clones. As everyone departed, Naruto joined the Konaha group in Itachi's room. They created the clones, gave them their clothing and placed the masking seals on them. Naruto went to the other rooms to place the masking seals, and within 30 minutes, the clones were off to meet for the Gokage summit. Naruto had a clone flash the assigned people to the port, and his clones set up the summoning seals and the fallback barrier seals. With the clones, who will just be referred to as their originals' names, they were escorted by 2 squads of samurai toward a fort that rested in the center of 3 mountains that were shaped like wolf heads. The landscape was covered in snow and the wind blew the loose snow around with impunity, which made for a very chilly walk. That being said, the clone group walked silently with each clone playing its part. As they entered the fort, they were greeted by Mifune and a samurai contingent. Since Naruto couldn't feel anything off without going into sage mode, he couldn't determine if Mifune was being controlled. That was a variable that could really complicate things. Despite that, the group made their way into the meeting room and took their seats. The clones placed their Kage hats down on the table and noticed that there were seats for Iwa and Aim. That sent shivers up everyone's spine because Aim wasn't announced on the guest list, which was already a violation of the terms for the summit. After 10 minutes, Kitsuchi walked in flanked by Kuretsuchi and a golem guard. Another 5 minutes and Naruto's hackles rose when the Diva Path of Pain walked in and took his seat next to Kitsuchi. The Diva Path, with the Rinnegan active, locked eyes with Naruto. The message conveyed was simple: today we will see whose path to peace is the right one. Naruto could sense the determination and firm resolve of Nagato through his Yahiko path, which made him lament the stubborn stupidity of his cousin. Once the Kage were each sat down, Mifune rose and began the meeting. Honorable Kage, we are meeting here today in an effort to prevent war. I am Mifune, samurai head general of Iron Country, and I will be the impartial mediator of these discussions. Mifune said in his gruff and wizened tone. I growled, Lord Mifune, there has already been a breach of contract and etiquette. Aim was not on the guest list that was extended to Kumo, Kiri, Suna or Konaha. I demand an explanation. Mifune coughed and cleared his throat. Well, you have brought your allies and Iwa convinced me that it would only be fair if they brought their ally. Surely you jest, Lord Mifune. Aim is the home of the Akatsuki and that man sitting there is the figurehead of that organization. Said organization has attacked my village and has already stolen Biju from Kiri. Raza said in a disciplined monotone. Before Mifune could address those charges, Kitsuchi spoke up while Pain watched on placidly. And Konaha, your ally, is responsible for the death of the previous Tsuchikage and our Jinchuriki after he unjustly captured my daughter. Naruto couldn't maintain decorum and he, or well, his clone, broke out laughing. Oh, ha ha ha, that is rich. That is the angle you're going with. Oh, that's great. Naruto stopped laughing abruptly and scowled at Kitsuchi and no Kage made an effort to stop him. I sniffed out your invasion and took measures to halt it. I spared your daughter when I could have ripped her apart just as easily as I did Han and Onoki. You are a pitiful man with no honor. Kitsuchi growled and rose to his feet while Kuretsuchi stood to his side. Do not dare speak to me, demon. This earned every other Kage, except Pain, standing to their feet in response. The tension in the room was electric, like a room filled with gasoline, and everyone was holding their own match. Pain began chuckling darkly. This is why humans are not fit to rule over themselves. It takes someone with the will of God to rule over humanity. If you do not wish to die, sit down. Pain ended forcefully. This once again prompted Naruto's clone to laugh. Ha ha ha, oh, come on, Pain. Don't make me out you to everyone here. I tell you what, if you are God, then deactivate your Rinnegan. If you can activate and deactivate your vaunted eyes at will, then I will call you God. This earned confusion from everyone, even his allies. He had shared details with them, but he hadn't shared everything because he was still holding on to hope that he could save his cousin once all of this nonsense was over. He was so close last time around and he wasn't going to let it end in the same way. Pain, through Yahiko's body, scowled at Naruto. These are God's eyes. They cannot be deactivated. This comment earned a scoff and a mutter of, pussy, under Naruto's breath that was loud and clear enough for all to hear. Mifune coughed, we are getting off topic. Since Iwa called this summit, I will allow Kitsuchi to open negotiations and state his demands. Kitsuchi stood with a smirk on his face, and he formed hand signs that sent shimmers around the wall of the room. Well, I have closed off this space. Your Hiraishin will no longer work, demon. I demand that Naruto Senju Uzumaki be handed over to Iwa in recompense for his crimes against Iwa. This is non-negotiable. Failure to agree to these terms will result in your immediate deaths. Kitsuchi was stumped when all of the Kage started laughing, with Naruto laughing louder than all of them combined. Itachi's clone, with a devilish smirk on its face, stood up and addressed that. We unequivocally decline. If you want war, bring it on. While Kitsuchi scowled, Pain rose from his seat. If you defy the will of God, Pain held out his hands and aimed them to both sides of the table. Then you will die. The clones of the cage and their bodyguards just sat back in their seats. Well, Lord Mifune, are you just going to let this happen? Mei asked. Mifune shook his head and squinted his eyes before he addressed the room. Yes, the demands of Iwa are, just. Ellipsis quote. Naruto's clone flashed into sage mode and stepped forward. Pain, this fight is between you and me. If you want me, come to the middle wolf head. Oh, and Zetsu, why don't you come out and say hello before I skewer you with nature again? Evidently, it wasn't time for the plant creature to make its move yet and it stayed within the floor. Pain was confused. Why were they acting so relaxed? Something was wrong and his senses were blaring warning alarms. No, you will come with me now or they will all die here. Naruto scoffed at that and slapped his hands to his cheeks in mock surprise. Oh no. Come off it, Pain. Why not drop the pretenses? Why don't you spring your trap and watch me walk right through it? Why don't you bring out your reinforcements and we will have it out? Naruto was walking calmly towards Pain as he spoke, which caused the Iwa and AIM groups to step forward. Strangely, the cage were just sitting and watching. Drop the act, demon. Kuretsuchi yelled. You cannot get out of this room. Naruto chuckled before locking eyes with Kuretsuchi, which made her step behind her father. Tell me, Yahiko, Kitsuchi and others. What happens when rampant nature energy is released in a closed space? At that moment, a Zetsu clone, which had integrated with the table, was pushed out of the table with a spike of wood through its chest. It immediately began turning into a tree and that tree sprouted leaves and flowers. You wouldn't kill your cage to kill us. Kitsuchi shouted. Every cage started laughing and now the Iwa contingent was panicking. Pain stepped forward and placed his hands on Kitsuchi and Kuretsuchi's shoulders as wooden stakes launched at the group. Pain held up one palm and called out, Universal Push. The force of the jutsu shattered the walls of the room and everything in it in the direction of the attack. Through the colossal damage to the room, nobody noticed the puffs of smoke and only Naruto's wood clone remained standing when the smoke cleared. Middle head, Pain. We will settle our differences there. Naruto said firmly before launching an attack on the three. Unfortunately, the diva path was more than capable of dealing with a single wood clone and Kitsuchi was able to defend himself. The clone put up a brief, but intense fight and it went out with a bang, but that was all it could do in the end. The clone explosion technique blew off the rest of the top of the tower that Pain hadn't already destroyed, and it was only due to Pain blowing the explosion away that the Iwa contingent and Mifune survived. As the dust settled around them, the diva path turned to Kitsuchi. Gather your forces and do not let the cage escape. My animal path has seen them move to the port. Kitsuchi bowed. As you wish, Lord Pain, will you join us in our assault? Pain looked off into the distance at the middle wolf head. No, Conan and I will collect the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. Without him, the alliance will fail. I leave the cage and their entourages to you. At that moment, Zetsu appeared with its white and black half together. Lord Pain, Ames and Iwa's forces have reached the Iron Country border. My clone's memories made it seem like things didn't go according to plan. The black half said in a disappointed tone. Pain looked placidly at Zetsu. They knew it was a trap and it seems like they each sent clones. Regardless, they will not get away. My jutsu holds strong over Iron Country and the Kyuubi Jinchuriki cannot escape. Kitsuchi and Kuretsuchi exchanged concerned looks. Lord Pain, I mean no offense, but are you sure you can defeat the demon brat? Pain's brows furrowed and emotion showed on Yahiko's face for the first time. I am God. You do not question your God, mortal. While Kitsuchi and Kuretsuchi were bowing, Pain's dive path disappeared in a puff of smoke. Black Zetsu grinned darkly. Well, you three, get to the ports and secure the Ikibi, Nibi and Hachibi Jinchuriki. Your forces will arrive in 15 minutes. Middle mountain of the Three Wolf Heads formation. The dive path of Pain appeared in a puff of smoke at the head of the formation of his paths. Conan was floating on a paper bird behind the bird summon of the animal path that was carrying all of paths. The group flew over Naruto who was already in his golden sage mode as he sat on the peak of the mountain in a lotus position. As the diva path appeared, Naruto stood up, opened his eyes and fixed his golden orbs on Pain. Now that we are all here, do you have anything to say before I destroy your paths, Nagato? Naruto's calm voice carried through the air as the winds in the thin mountain air grew turbulent. Diva spoke for the group, as was the usual. Kyuubi. Naruto interrupted him with a potent flare of chakra. Cousin, we have been over this. Each time you refer to me as the Kyuubi Jinchuriki will cost you one of your paths. I gave you a warning and 3 years to see the light. I have held out hope that it wasn't too late to save one of the last family members that is alive. Be warned, Nagato, that I have great patience, but it is not infinite. Naruto's tone had deepened into a growl and the soft utterance still carried itself to each path's ears. The paths didn't react, but Konan did. Diva spoke once more, Naruto Uzumaki, if you surrender and come with me, I will revive you after the Kyuubi is extracted, on behalf of our family ties. That is my final offer. Naruto started laughing ominously before he fixed a glare that nearly froze the 6 paths of pain. No, Nagato, this is your final offer. Listen to reason, join my cause or I offer you no mercy. I will destroy each one of your paths before I travel to your real body and beat the ever-living shit out of you. Pain visibly stiffened at the threat. Very well, Naruto, it seems we are at an impasse. It is time for me to show you that a mere mortal cannot defy the will of God. Naruto bit back his retort and created a wood wall that blocked the wave of gravitational force that was shot at him. He flipped backwards and dodged the beak of the massive bird summoned the pains were riding and he engaged in a fight versus the Diva, Asura, Preta and human path. Naruto sent a series of wind blades out of each of his hands as he flipped backwards and dodged the coordinated assault. After the human path lost one of its hands, the Preta path stepped forward and absorbed the chakra of the jutsu. Naruto, remember, these frontliners aren't your first targets. You need to get rid of the Naraka path first so they can't be revived. Stick to the plan, Ruto. Kyuubi roared from within the mindscape as he meditated next to Chome. The two were working on syncing their chakra so that they could boost Naruto's power simultaneously. Ruto, use my scale powder to create the opening, Chome said excitedly as her chakra entwined with Kurama's. After dodging a volley of rockets and blades from the Azura path, Naruto had to erect a 20-foot thick earth barrier that blocked the gravitational wave from Diva's hands. 1. Naruto counted in his head as his barrier shattered in a cloud of dusty earth. 2. Naruto counted as he gathered the chakra before breathing out a wave of vibrant yellow-orangish powder of his mouth that encompassed the whole peak of the Middle Wolf Mountain. 3. Naruto's internal counter continued as he formed the hand sign to ignite the scale powder. 4. I am sorry, Nagato, this is going to hurt. The whole mountain erupted in the brightest chakra flash that illuminated the whole ground and sky around Iron Country. Even though Naruto had erected multiple layers of chakra over his eyes and had them closes, his vision was still blurry with multiple rings of light. It was as if he had a staring contest with a flashbang grenade and it went off after 5 minutes of staring right at it. Naruto removed the focus on his vision by keeping his eyes closed and used his senjutsu chakra to feel out the paths. He felt the stunned and irritated chakra of pain as it linked him to his paths, and he sensed that Konan had her bird rise into the sky as she was unable to see a thing. Naruto sensed 2 of the dead feeling bodies about 50 meters away and he formed a Rasenshuriken in his right hand and disappeared in a shunshin towards what he believed was the Naraka path. Pain had been pleased that his paths had the advantage in the fight thus far and the boy was being forced to fight completely defensively. After his Diva path's second use of the Shinra Tensei, or universal push, he was intrigued by the massive cloud of powder. He hadn't seen this jutsu from the boy's scouting report so he gathered his assault paths behind the Preta path and prepared to counter the jutsu. Even from his perch miles away, his actual Rinnegan was blinded by the vibrant chakra flash. He cursed and ordered the Diva path to blindly unleash a full-powered, Shinra Tensei, to thwart his opponent's plan. Naruto appeared next to the Naraka path after using a flash step, a faster and more disorienting, at least for those unused to its effects, version of the Shunshin. He dropped the intense wind-coated chakra sphere next to the Naraka path and flash stepped away to a location that was further away from the assault paths. As he exited the second flash step, 2 things occurred nearly simultaneously. First, his Rasenshuriken went off and the Naraka path was shredded by millions of microscopic wind blades that acted like a wind blender on steroids for anything that was caught in its blast area. Second, the Diva path launched a 360-degree, Shinra Tensei, that completely obliterated the mountain peak. Naruto recovered from the flash step, and he didn't have time to fasten himself to the mountain or to block the massive gravitational force that slammed into his body. While he was ragdolling through the air, he idly thought that particular attack hurt much more last time around. That didn't stop him from sailing through the air and crashing into the Western Wolf Mountain. As he pulled himself out of the crater and dusted the rubble off of his combat uniform, Naruto focused his senses and was pleased to say that his attack had worked on the Naraka path, and he didn't have to worry about reanimating enemies anymore. Nagato scowled as his eyes burning with vibrant white and yellow rings from the blinding attack. He let out a roar of pain and frustration when he felt the link to his Naraka path severed. His use of a full-powered, Shinra Tensei, had him huffing and puffing, and the eyes of his paths were still useless at this point in time. That being said, the Preta path could feel the potent chakra of the boy, and that feeling guided the paths to turn toward their opponent. The animal path had used its bird summon to absorb the impact of the Shinra Tensei, and it was falling through the air when it summoned a massive rhino and a three-headed dog. The two summons were falling directly on top of the Jinchuriki, and the fresh Rinnegan eyes of the summons provided a way for Pain to see clearly once more. That enabled his paths to jump toward Naruto's new location in an attempt to save the animal path. Naruto sensed everything happening in slow motion, and he was hardly surprised by the summoning of the two creatures that were mere meters from crushing him in his new mountain. Naruto weaved through hand signs and focused his chakra before he crouched and placed both of his hands on the ground. 10 massive wooden spikes rose from the earth and raced into the sky towards the animal summons. The rhino was the first to roar out in pain as 3 of the wooden spikes impaled it. Next, the dog was impaled through its center head and 3 times in its legs and body. Naruto smirked devilishly as he switched to the snake hand seal and directed more of his nearly sentient chakra through the earth and into the wooden spikes. Before they could dispel, the animal summons erupted in an explosion of gore as the wooden stakes sprouted massive thorns that tore through nearly every part of their body. As the blood was falling, Naruto focused on the milliseconds he had to target the isolated animal path. The path had landed on the back of the dog summon, and it had jumped into the air towards the other paths when he had cast his Mokuden, Grand Wooden Spikes Jutsu. As the animal path soared through the air in an attempt to link up with the other paths, it summoned another of the bird summons it had at its disposal. As the animal path secured itself to the bird, its head turned to see something godly. A fist the size of a mountain made of wind that was translucent, except for the potent bluish sheen that indicated copious amounts of wind chakra, was soaring towards the animal path. The bird tried to climb above the jutsu's area of effect, but it wouldn't make it out in time. The Preta path jumped forward off of a platform created by the airborne Asura path in an attempt to save the animal path. The Preta path kept its hands forward to absorb the jutsu that was racing it toward the animal path. The Preta path was mere feet away when the effect of the divine fist of the wind god slammed into the animal path and the bird it was riding. The Preta path was able to absorb the local chakra that slammed into its palms, but it was unable to save the animal path. Diva path was able to see the shattered form of the animal path as it ragdolled over the mountains and into the far-off horizon. Pain screamed out in anger as his connection to the animal path was severed. Through the eyes of his paths, that could now see clearly, he saw that the animal path looked like it was slammed head-on by a freight train and subsequently crushed by a tank. He knew there was no hope in recovering the body of the animal path, much less reviving it by using the Naraka path. Pain was panicking now as his battle strength dwindled as his cousin dissected him in a precise and planned manner. Battle at Tetsu Port. Naruto's clone had erected the summoning seals and helped to prepare a fallback point for the allied forces. The tension in the air had reached a fever pitch and everyone was working frantically to prepare the area for defense. It didn't help that a platoon of samurai had attempted to prevent them from completing their assigned tasks, which was a 10-minute delay that nobody appreciated. As the bound samurai were secured upon the Kumo ship that had transported them, everyone heard a far-off explosion and saw dust rising from the skies over the fort that the Kage's clones were meeting at. Moments later, Naruto's clone announced that the Kages and the remaining protective detail were en route to the port. It also said that the original Naruto was going to fight Pain away from the main battle and that Iwa and AIM forces were inbound. The clone sat in a meditative position and called on the natural energy around the port. Its eyes snapped open when it was able to get an accurate reading, and it gathered those assigned to set up the fallback point. Okay, everyone, Kages will be here in 10. Iwa and AIM forces in the village are pursuing them. The main Iwa and AIM forces are 20 minutes out and I can sense thousands of Zetsu transporting through the ground. This is scenario 3 and we will need to hold out for a minimum of an hour before our own reinforcements make it here. The Naruto clone tried to keep its tone calm as it informed those gathered around. Darui took charge, set up an ambush for those that are pursuing the Kage. Chojuro, summon our quick reaction teams and get them caught up on the situation. Clone Naruto, prepare and power the barriers. We will need them to delay the enemy. Naruto's clone spoke up, okay, to make bad news worse, the Uchiha, Kakuzu and Kisame have entered the fray and they have attacked the Kage en route. It furrowed its eyes in concentration to feel out the newly emerged battle. I is fighting Kisame and guiding him to our western edge. Tsunade is fighting against Kakuzu. The clone winced as everyone heard an explosion. Well, Mama isn't holding back. She is already in sage mode and is engaging Kakuzu while falling back further west of the Raikage. Kankuro whistled as he summoned the Suna QRF. Damn, Mama was always scary when she went all out. The desert never looked the same after your battles with her. A massive puff of smoke filled the area right in front of the ship. Alright, you lot, get your orders from Naruto. He moved to the next summoning seal while Naruto assigned them sectors. Within 10 minutes, Naruto had set up a total of 150 elite shinobi from Kumo, Kiri, Konaha and Suna. The Mizukage, Kage, Hokage and their guard details darted into the port area. There were around 50 of the original 75 shinobi still in pursuit. However, as the allied Kages passed the front line of defense, chaos rained down on the shinobi that were pursuing. As Gaara passed, the Naruto clone gave the order and the Earth users acted first by erecting a 400-foot wide earth bowl around the pursuers and the walls rose nearly 80 feet up. Next, the Kiri shinobi all used their most powerful water jutsu to hit the pursuers hard and drown them in condensed water. The Kumo contingent jumped up on the walls of the earth bowl and cast a variety of powerful lightning jutsu into the water. The resulting steam was ominous as it spread over the port, but that didn't stop the next part of the attack. The front of the earth bowl crumbled and a volley of fire and wind jutsu decimated the remaining earth bowl and the surviving shinobi. As the steam cleared, a victory shout rang out around the port. The first wave of enemies was dealt with, but that was just the preamble. Temari and Samui jumped next to the Naruto clone and got a quick hug from the clone that was in sage mode. It was Temari that took the lead as the Kagen leaders huddled around the clone after ordering their forces to secure the perimeter. Alright, Ruto, give us an update. Temari said in a deadly serious tone. Scenario 3, the clone started, which earned a gasp from Mei. We have roughly 5,000 incoming shinobi and an equal number of Zetsu. Itachi frowned, 10,000 against less than 200. The Naruto clone continued, our forces are 45 minutes out. We can apologize to Mifune later, I say we just decimate the area. Our foes are human, so we will unleash our strongest attacks from the start and hopefully cause them to pause in fear. Mei scowled, Naruto, their numbers will overwhelm us. We can buy some time, but against those numbers. Gaara stepped forward into the circle, it will be fine, Lady Mizukage. Temari and I will open the assault. Temari, I will kick up a sandstorm. I do not wish to sink with Shukaku until it is absolutely necessary. After I open, you hit them with a steam jutsu. Temari grimaced at the thought of killing that many people, but... She nodded. Very well. Raza looked to the Naruto clone, are you fighting with us? The clone stood up and shook its head in the negative, I will be maintaining the fallback barriers and countering Zetsu's underground transport technique. Give your men the battle plan and have them pair up in squads that can use combination jutsu. Fire users with wind, lightning users with water. This whole plan is to overpower them with quality until our reinforcements arrive. Mei nodded, very well. Darui, I will stagger my formations with yours. I will control the eastern edge and you get the western edge. Darui nodded lazily, yup, the Raikage and Tsunade are fighting on the western edge. Once they finish their fights, I will have them sweep through and give us a breather. Raza nodded, Gaara and I will hold down the middle with Konaha. 5 minutes later, a horde of AIM and Iwa shinobi halted a couple hundred feet in front of the formation of elite shinobi. Kitsuchi had taken charge of the forces and he had ordered the halt. The ground shook as another explosion went off to the west and then the whole world went an orangish yellow as Naruto's scale powder jutsu went off. This stunned both sides and both sides were wiping their eyes in an effort to regain their vision. Once his vision cleared, Kitsuchi shouted the charge order to his shinobi. Waves of earth rose up in front of the formation as 20 Iwa shinobi used a collaboration jutsu to erect the massive earthen wave. The Iwa forces charged behind the wave, but they weren't ready for the seas to rise up amidst a rumble of thunder as the whole port surged with electricity as the Kumo shinobi got their lightning jutsu ready. Torrents of water and lightning tore through the earth wave and slammed into a surprised enemy who wasn't ready for their collaboration jutsu to be dealt with so easily. As the earth wave crumbled, chaos ensued, but nobody was ready for what followed. As massive sandstorm came to life from the center of the port, and it rapidly spread to encompass nearly a square mile in front of the port. As Gaara sweat from the effort, Raza added his own gold dust and wind techniques. Finally, Temari had gathered her chakra and completed her dance as her fan glowed with a potent blue chakra. She lashed out and the winds of the sandstorm integrated with the steam wind and howls of pain echoed through the howling winds as the Iwa and AIM forces learned to fear the power of Suna. Western Wolf Head Mountain. Naruto sensed the massive buildup of chakra at the port, and he felt the intense battle start. He cleared his mind and refocused on dealing with the remaining 4 paths of pain and Konan. He dodged a volley of paper shuriken that coated the mountain, and he cursed as each shuriken began glowing and sizzling. Naruto coated himself in a dense earth dome as the paper shuriken bombs went off. His Mokuten ability was more than enough to handle the explosions, but he once again found himself on the defensive. After freeing himself from his earth dome, he dodged a volley of rockets that were followed shortly after by another gravitational push. To his consternation, the battle maintained this flow for the next 5 minutes. Every long-range jutsu he fought back with was absorbed by the Preta path and he knew that a regime change was needed in order to break the stalemate. He thought internally to Kurama and Chome, who both said that they were ready. Naruto's golden sage mode erupted in a wave of power as the combined yokai of Chome and Kurama took form over him. Naruto's normal orange cloak now had wings, a chitinous-looking helmet and he felt the power overflowing a bit more than usual. He tempered the overflowing yokai with more senjutsu chakra and the wavering chakra. Flames tempered themselves and settled into a hardened layer of yokai. Cool, Naruto thought before smirking devilishly, only one more thing to add. After thinking this, 9 tails hung down like streamers from his tailbone and they swayed contentedly behind Naruto's form. He launched himself into the air toward the one enemy that was isolated enough to take advantage of. His wings beat furiously as he soared towards Konan with his 9 chakra chain tails followed. He closed the distance in less than 3 seconds, which evidently surprised the airborne paper kunoichi enough to open her up for an attack. Konan had relegated herself to a support role since she knew that she would be less than useful in a close-range fight against Naruto. She had just launched a volley of explosive paper shuriken and she was molding her next attack when she felt a massive surge of power. She looked down to see a truly terrifying sight as the Kyuubi Jinchuriki somehow sprouted wings and tails and was flying toward her at an astounding speed. She ordered her paper bird to dive, but she knew it wasn't going to be enough. She began separating her body into sheets of paper as Naruto sent 2 chakra chains towards her. Naruto was fighting against an internal dilemma. He didn't want to kill Konan and if he used any of his wind techniques, he would undoubtedly kill Konan who had just separated into sheets of paper. Thinking quickly, Naruto halted his forward momentum and ordered his chains to form a barrier. The Diva Path roared out and aimed both palms toward the newly emerged, airborne dome of chakra chains and let loose a full-powered, Shinra Tensai. The chains didn't even ripple when the gravitational force slammed into it, which caused the Preta path to be thrown by the Asura path. Inside the chain barrier, Konan found it impossible to stay separated in the paper sheets. She reformed and saw that she was trapped by the Mokuden chains that had wrapped around her wrists and ankles, and her chakra was draining quickly within the barrier. She looked at the boy who was glowing with power and she was surprised to see a sad look on his face. She instinctively cocked her head in a questioning manner. Naruto offered a weak smile. Konan, I do not wish to kill you. You are a good woman who has chosen to believe in her friend and follow his dream. Naruto unsealed a kunai and rapidly closed the distance to the immobilized kunoichi. He tucked the 3-pronged kunai into her Akatsuki cloak. Be careful after this. That Uchiha will get desperate. Call me if you need me. Konan offered an understanding smile as she felt herself slipping into chakra exhaustion and her eyes were half-lidded. "Thank you, Naruto," she whispered tiredly before her eyes closed and the black kanji spread across her form. The Preta path slammed into the barrier of chakra chains and began absorbing the chakra rapidly. The barrier cracked and broke to show Konan being held by the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. From his throne, Pain roared out and focused his power to the Preta path. Naruto was surprised when his chakra started draining rapidly and his chains were dissolved, which caused Konan to begin plummeting to the ground. The Preta path, having absorbed what kept it airborne, also began descending to the ground in an uncontrolled manner. Naruto panted from the chakra drain as his wings nearly flickered out of existence, but Chome was able to push more chakra out and stabilize them in time. The Diva path once again held out both hands and pulled the Preta path and Konan to him. The two figures were pulled rapidly in his direction as the human and Asura paths were watching the Jinchuriki. The Asura path formed rockets that sailed through the air in trails of smoke towards Naruto, who dodged them easily as he hovered in midair. How do I deal with them without killing Konan now? Naruto thought. Kurama frowned as he remained in a seated meditative position within the mindscape. I don't know, Ruto. No wide-scale jutsu, so I guess that leaves taijutsu. Naruto groaned. Taijutsu against a guy that controls gravity. Chome chittered in excitement. You can do it, Ruto. It was Kurama's turn to groan. You have turned my sister into a fan biju. Ow. Kurama growled as he rubbed the back of his head from Chome's tail strike. Stupid big brother. You deserved that. I am not a fan biju, I am just trying to motivate our vessel. Chome chittered agitatedly. Naruto tuned out the biju's argument and he dove down toward the paths. A boom was heard as he broke the sound barrier in a surprising display of acceleration. Naruto crashed into the mountain in between the paths in an explosion of earth and wind. This sent the paths flying in opposite directions and he turned and caught Konan. He tried to cushion the blow, but the unconscious woman grunted at the impact and change of momentum when Naruto took off away from the paths of pain that were getting back to their feet. Naruto flew toward the western mountain and landed ungracefully, which forced him to slide on the snow to regain his footing. Naruto created a wood clone as he was sliding, and the wood clone took Konan's limp form in time for it to escape the explosion that rocked the western mountain. Naruto was flung further down the mountain from the explosion caused by the Asura path and then he felt an abrupt change in momentum as he was pulled towards the Diva path. He righted himself in air and saw that the Preta path was waiting for him with both hands out in a position that told Naruto it was about to catch him in a bear hug. Naruto scoffed and sent 9 Mokuden chains at the Preta path as he was merely 20 feet away. The Diva path's eyes widened in panic as it released the universal pull that it used on Naruto and immediately cast the universal push. Naruto grunted in pain as the abrupt change in momentum rocked his body and skull, but his attack paid off. The Preta path was pulled along as it was impaled by 5 Mokuden chakra chains and the two forms went sailing back into the western Wolfhead Mountain, which was nearly destroyed by this point in time. The Preta path felt a chakra-draining battle taking place as the draining effects of the Mokuden chains fought against the Rinnegan's abilities to absorb chakra. The Preta path was slowly winning out, but then it slammed into the western mountain. Unlike Naruto who was reinforced by Senjutsu chakra and copious amounts of yokai, the Preta path slammed into the mountain in a crunch of bone and chakra rods. Pain once again yelled in frustration as the link to yet another of his paths was severed. Pain let out a roar of frustration through the Diva path as it was one of 3 surviving paths. The human path was practically useless and the Asura path had been less than effective. As he was lost in his frustrating thoughts, he barely registered the wind dragon that was sailing towards the remaining paths. That being said, he did notice, and he raised a hand for yet another time and used the power of the Rinnegan to push it away with a wave of gravitational force. Apparently, that was according to Naruto's plan because as the wind dragon was forcibly dispelled the ground under the 3 paths began shaking. A dragon's maw, formed from Mokuden, rose up from under the 3 paths. Diva jumped up and used its control over gravity to float above the attack. The Asura path used rockets to propel it out of range of the massive dragon's maw. However, the human path was left trapped and alone as the teeth made of wood shredded the corpse that housed the human path. Naruto panted and let the yokai cloak fade from around him as his chakra coils burned from overuse. The combined yokai cloak was intense and it put an unfamiliar strain on his chakra coils, so he decided to take the rest of the fight without it. He rebalanced the senjutsu chakra and he was able to sense the diva and asura paths hovering in the air over the Middle Wolf Mountain. Well, sadly, it wasn't much of a mountain now. It was more a pile of rubble that served to prove an intense battle had taken place. Partner, Obito is watching from the eastern mountain. I can sense that foul chakra from his Sharingan, stupid bastard. Kurama warned. Camy stomped her legs in agitation since she no longer needed to funnel her yokai to Naruto. Only 2 more, Ruto. Give your chakra coils a rest and let the senjutsu heal them before we can ignite them once more. Camy added in a positive tone. Gotcha, Cho and Q. I think I will let the Uchiha Tem know that he shouldn't be standing so close. Q. Handle the wind. I will bring the water. Naruto said with a smirk in his mind. Kurama chuckled, finally bringing this out, Naruto nodded externally and closed his eyes to focus. He pulled on the water that was locked in fixed granules of snow and ice. This pulled massive amounts of snow and ice to bend to his will as Kurama focused the wind chakra internally and spread Naruto's chakra through the air. Naruto's eyes snapped open after he went through the hand signs for a water dragon, except a couple of the sign were changed. After weaving the last sign, he clapped his hands together which caused the ice to race towards his as if he was a magnet in a room filled with iron shavings. Combination Jutsu, Divine Ice Dragon. Naruto roared as a dragon that was over 1,000 feet long and 250 feet wide rose up from the western mountain and let out a roar that echoed around Iron Country. The dragon swayed its tail as if using it to propel itself as it raced towards the airborne diva and asura paths. The gravitational force and rockets of the two proved insufficient to disrupt the massive dragon that continued its destructive journey towards them. The two disappeared among the chaos of ice and wind shards as the ice dragon tore through the rubble pile that used to be the center mountain and crashed into the eastern mountain. Naruto knew that Obito could simply phase out, but it was still a sufficient warning to the bastard Uchiha. Obito had been watching the fight from his mount on the eastern wolf head. He had been impressed by the Kyuubi Jinchuriki's prowess and supremely disappointed by the lackluster performance of a fake god. He admittedly missed half the battle due to the blinding jutsu that was used. He had recently regained his vision after spending a couple minutes in his pocket dimension and using his chakra to heal his eyes. When he returned, he noticed that 3 of the 6 paths were defeated, as well as Konan. He knew the inevitable outcome of this mission, but he wanted to see if pain was able to weaken the Kyuubi Jinchuriki enough for him to swoop in and finish the fight. To his amazement, he watched the human path get swallowed by an earthen dragon that reminded Obito of the memories that Madara had shared with him. His jaw then fell when the biggest ice dragon he had ever seen rose up out of the western mountain, swallowed the 2 remaining paths of pain and then swerved towards him. He had enough time to phase back into his pocket dimension, but when he returned 30 seconds later, he wasn't ready for the 200-foot plummet. As he landed hard, his Sharingan showed him the destroyed mountain and the devastation caused by the ice dragon. All 3 mountains were now piles of ice and rubble. What were once admittedly beautiful forces of nature were now broken down into their base components, lacking their majestic form. He forced himself to refocus on the ongoing battle and he looked around for the orange hair that he had come to know as the Diva Path of Pain. Through the chakra, dust and ice that lingered in the air he was unable to detect the final path of pain. That all changed when he felt a pull on his form, and he immediately phased into his pocket dimension and kept his senses in the real world. Pain had sacrificed his Asura path to preserve the Diva path from the ice dragon. The Asura path blew open a hole in the roaring tempest of ice and wind before it threw the Diva path upward into the sky. The Diva path hovered over the mountain range and looked down with a look of sheer rage on its face as the ice dragon plowed through the eastern mountain and crashed into the landscape below. He felt the link to the Asura path get severed and he let out his loudest roar of pain and frustration as he focused as much chakra as he could into his Diva path. The Diva path formed a super dense black orb in its right hand before releasing it into the air and fleeing the area. Not even the Kyuubi Jinchuriki would be able to resist the greatest jutsu of God that was strong enough to create the moon. Nagato watched through Yahiko's eyes as all of the loose rubble, ice and chunks of mountain were pulled toward the Chibaku Tensai that he released. His Rinnegan located the glowing form of the Kyuubi Jinchuriki and saw that wood chakra chains were anchoring him to the western mountain. He roared and poured more chakra into the black hole that he had created. Naruto yelped in surprise as his chain anchors caused the base of the western mountain to be ripped up and towards the one jutsu that nearly ended him last time around. Rather than panic, he closed his eyes and focused on merging his chakra with Kurama. No offense to Chome, but he needed Kurama's form to resist this jutsu. A magnificent golden fox formed on top of the massive chunk of earth that was soaring into the air towards the black hole. The golden fox formed a Bijudama, Biju bomb, on the front of its snout and sent the bomb towards the earth formation that was hovering in the sky. A massive explosion boomed in the sky over the mountains, but it wasn't enough to disrupt the most powerful jutsu of the Rinnegan. Naruto and Kurama changed strategies and wooden armor appeared on the ethereal golden form of Kurama. Mokuton encased chakra tails tore through every clump of earth that was gathering over the black hole. 3 mountains worth of rubble were torn asunder by the Mokuton tails, which exposed the chakra core of the jutsu. The golden fox snarled as it was near the core before all 9 chakra tails assaulted the chakra core at once. In an explosion of chakra, Naruto and the fox form of Kurama were sent hurtling towards the ground as the destabilized black hole exploded with world-shattering force. The massive golden fox slammed into the ground as earth and ice showered down upon it. The Biju transformation absorbed the worst of the explosion and impact for Naruto, but it caused the form to destabilize, which left Naruto huffing and puffing on one knee as earth and ice continued to rain down from the sky. Pain was infuriated to the point that he ignored his own exhaustion as he watched the Kyuubi Jinchuriki escape his most powerful jutsu. The Diva Path fell out of the air as it no longer had enough chakra to hover in the sky. Pain coughed out a lung full of blood as the link to Yahiko was temporarily severed. The body of Yahiko crashed into the ground from his perch in the sky before it was covered in a layer of ice and dust. Naruto regained his composure after 30 seconds and he attempted to calm his senses and burning chakra coils. He took deep breaths and tuned out the overwhelming amounts of chakra that were hovering in the air. He maintained his golden form and shook his head as he thought, no wonder the sage could fight for days on end. This power is amazing. Focus Naruto. Kurama roared through the mental link, which snapped the blonde knucklehead back to his task. Hey, Q, is it just me or is the link to the Diva Path weak? Naruto thought as he sensed the chakra connection to Yahiko. Kurama's scowl faded and a contemplative look took over his face. Spread your senses and find Nagato. I no longer sense the Uchiha. Naruto forced the panic rising back down and focused on tracing the chakra link back to Nagato's position. As he found him, his eyes widened in horror as he felt Obito's presence near Nagato. In a flash of gold, Naruto dashed towards Nagato's position while praying that he would make it in time. Battle of the Port, Part 2. As Gaara's magnificent sandstorm died down and Temari's steam wind had evaporated, there was a momentary lull in the battle. Silence hung over the battlefield save for the flickering of many small fires that dotted the sundered landscape. As the air cleared of the sand and debris, the Allied forces saw hundreds of earth domes and other defensive techniques. It was clear that they were fighting a skilled shinobi force rather than simply exterminating a large force of bandits. The earth domes began to crumble down and showed that over half of the shinobi force survived the intense combo attack of the Subaku family. The forces glared at each other momentarily before the intense fight began once more. The air was filled with battle cries, jutsus of all shapes, sizes and natures, screams of pain and death moans. The intense fight went on for 15 minutes when everyone was once again forced to stop and gape as a majestic ice dragon roared to life over the remains of 3 landmarks. The momentary disruption didn't last long as the screams of an intense battle filled the air once more. Temari was ideal in a battle position such as the one she was in. She was at the front of the vanguard, and she was free to unleash the mayhem of wind and steam in 180 degrees in front of her. Her flanks were protected by her brother and father, and her other brother was controlling his puppets to deal with any of the scum that managed to close the distance. She let out 3 more funnels filled with the chaos of wind and steam that rose into twisters and tore into a group of AIM ninja that were assaulting the eastern flank. Samui was paired with some mist shinobi on the western flank, and she felt Tsunade's presence join the battle. She wasn't a particularly gifted sensor or anything, she just couldn't mistake the trademark fissures and rumble from her monstrous strength for anything other than her mama. She had opened with some of her strongest lightning jutsu, lightning style, electromagnetic murder, combined with a joint jutsu from the mist shinobi led by Zabuza. The water-style water colliding wave soared over the allied formation before forming into a wave that was 40 feet tall and 300 feet wide. The wave that crackled with electricity crashed into an enemy formation of over 100 shinobi, and the earth barriers they used to defend themselves did little to temper the impact of the collaboration jutsu. After the opening attack, Samui joined a charge alongside the swordsmen and women of Kumo and Kiri. They were ordered to perform a quick attack and retreat sequence. Samui was able to sever 2 heads from necks before the retreat was ordered. She let out an impressed whistle in her head when a wall of flames erupted over the western flank to cover the retreat. After reforming, Samui looked out and saw that there were still hundreds if not thousands of enemies on the western flank. As she was regaining her bearings, she saw another fissure tear through the lands in front of the port. She watched Tsunade jump high into the air before summoning a massive fragment of Katsuyu that let out a monstrous cloud of acid upon the enemy formation. The massive slug ate earth and water jutsu to the sides and head before retreating to the summoning realm. Tsunade had jumped from her perch on Katsuyu's head and glowed a vibrant blue as she plummeted to the ground glowing with chakra. Her axe kick caused a fissure that was several hundred feet deep and nearly 800 feet wide to appear in front of the western flank. Tsunade landed next to Samui while breathing hard. Her sage mode faded, and she took a knee next to Samui. Hinata. Samui yelled, and moments later Hinata was already caring for Tsunade. Hinata looked up after analyzing Tsunade. I am taking her back to the ship. She is bordering chakra exhaustion and it is putting strain on the baby. Naruto's clone will be able to give her a chakra boost. Samui nodded before turning back to the battlefield as hordes of white Zetsu began appearing on their side of the crater. She heard Darui order a close-in formations to prevent the Zetsu from being able to imitate allies. She sensed Hinata disappear to the ship with Tsunade and whispered a prayer to Camy for the health of the child. She returned her full attention to the fight against the horde of white Zetsu. Ino was grouped with a Yamanaka team that was part of the quick reaction force. After Gaara's storm, the battle on the eastern flank resumed with terrifying intensity. Their role in such a wide-scale battle was simple: disorient and distract. The mind jutsu from the Yamanaka were truly terrifying in such a scenario. She watched her father go slack as he took control of a commander in the enemy's ranks. It was the general of Iwa's explosion corps, and she marveled at her father's ability to rapidly understand and use his enemy's own jutsu. Multiple explosions occurred around the general before he began glowing a brilliant white and detonating in a chaotic explosion that sent a mushroom cloud hundreds of feet into the sky. Ino focused on using Yamanaka-style mind destruction and Yamanaka-style sensory deprivation jutsus. When her jutsu landed, groups of shinobi would fall over in drooling heaps or stumble around flailing wildly. Ino knew that this was the most she could do for the allied forces and that any hand-to-hand combat would lead to unnecessary casualties. She refocused and took control of a big man from Iwa, who suddenly turned around and charged into his own ranks. Itachi had taken command of the fire users and wind users that were partnered together for this defensive operation. He marveled at the potential of the two being used in tandem as firestorms rained down on their enemy position. He hated the pointless loss of life, the screams of agony, the smell of burning flesh and ash. He wanted a peaceful world, and he lamented the fact that one must fight for peace. One must commit atrocious acts to ensure that said acts were not committed against the ones he loved. He watched Shisui launch a fire dragon that was empowered by Misori's wind jutsu. The dragon grew to 3 times its normal size and tore through 3 earth walls before exploding in a ball of fire amidst the enemy formation. Things were going well, but the allied forces were using far too much ninjutsu for this to be a sustainable battle strategy. His Sharingan caught a blur of blue that tore through enemy formations almost faster than his Sharingan could track before the blur jumped into the air and landed in the back of the enemy formation. The explosion of earth and lightning that poured out of the crater was accompanied by screams of confusion from the enemy formation. I had finished his intense fight with Kisame Hoshigake. It took him longer than he thought to deal with the man that was hailed to have as much chakra as a Biju. While the fight dragged on, I found himself disappointed by the fight. It was clear that the missing ninja from the mist had grown accustomed to fighting with Samahata. The look of surprise on his face's eyes, lightning style, lightning strike, tore through his chest told I that the monster of the mist didn't expect the jutsu to go right through his sword. Oh well, I was victorious and he was able to rejoin the battle and back up his allies now. I decided to take the long way around when it came to this battle. After dealing with Kisame on the western flank, he tore a blue, lightning-covered streak through the enemy formation all the way to the eastern edge. His body was his weapon and the potent lightning chakra evaporated the blood before it could even taint his form. He dashed through another group of unsuspecting shinobi before he launched himself into the air. He crashed down among the back ranks and took out an important-looking commander from aim. Realizing he had overextended a bit, he dashed back towards his allies while dispatching every enemy in his way. Itachi gave the Raikage a deadpanned look as the hulk of a man came to rest next to him. Itachi was surprised to see that the Raikage was already huffing and puffing, but he figured an S-ranked battle and a trip through hundreds of enemies would do that to a man. He coughed to get the Raikage's attention and cocked an eyebrow at the man. I recognized the gesture and decided to give a brief report. I took out Kisame and decided to sow some discord before rejoining our forces. How are things here? Itachi frowned slightly. We are holding them at bay, but we are expending chakra far too fast for this to be sustainable. As Itachi said that thousands of white Zetsu rose from the grounds 300 feet away from the front of the allied formation. And now we have them to deal with as well. I growled, I need a moment to recharge. He said to Itachi before he rose his voice and bellowed, close ranks. The allied formation fell back slightly and tightened up their formation. Flame contingent. Itachi yelled, which prompted the fire and wind users to prepare. The white Zetsu horde charged recklessly. They were a distraction meant to wear out the enemy. There were less than 2 of the enemy and thousands of allies remaining. Sure, the enemy consisted of the most elite ninja of each village, but that only made it worth the sacrifice. The Zetsu charged, each one only as strong as a Chunin, but they charged as one. They had the power to absorb chakra by direct contact and they were fairly resilient. As they were 100 feet out, a flame tornado nearly 500 feet wide tore through the center of the charge. The Zetsu were made of nature cells and their weakness was fire. The horde didn't stand a chance as Tamari used her link to the tornado to have it move toward the eastern flank. On the eastern flank, the initial charge was halted by dragons of water and lightning. The temporary stall in the charge caused them to fall prey to the flames of the tornado and it cost the Zetsu army nearly a third of its members. On the western flank, Darui let out a full-powered, storm-style, laser circus which tore through many of the Zetsu. As he was recovering, Zabuza stepped up and led the ninja from the mist to conjure another massive, water-colliding wave. As the water settled among the charging Zetsu, they were barbecued by a high-voltage electric current. Samui led the charge to clean up the closer survivors before quickly retreating back to the defensive lines. This was the battle plan that Darui developed, and it had proved effective thus far. Pain's lair in the mountains. Before everything began, Conan had helped the immobile form of Nagato get set up in a paper building that was formed in the disguise of a rock. He controlled his paths from there and the mountain he resided on was in between the Wolf Head mountain range and the capital of Iron Country. Pain had directed his paths from this location and after casting the Chibaku Tensai, he was trying to recover from expending so much chakra in his weakened form. After coughing out his second mouthful of blood, he wiped his lips and saw a swirl appear in front of him. The swirl faded to reveal Obito Uchiha in his orange mask and the lone Sharingan eye was glaring down at him. The Uchiha began pacing in front of him and he spoke condescendingly to the crumpled form of the man. Tisk, 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 the mighty god brought so low by a single boy. His tone was saturated with derision and disgust. Pain looked up wearily from his throne, knowing that he couldn't best this man in his current condition. Looks like the time has come for me to take my own action. At that moment, a black shadow crawled out of the ground and took over the right half of Nagato that was still in his throne of swords. A mouth formed on the black half of the face, and the voice of Black Zetsu spoke. Obito, he doesn't have enough chakra left to revive Lord Madara in all his greatness. The parasite sounded disappointed and disgusted by the discovery. Obito frowned and scowled, damned fool, waste all of your chakra like that. Oh well, I guess I will settle with taking my eyes in your life then. Nagato tried to resist the influence of the black creature that had paralyzed the right half of his body. In his current condition, he could do little to resist, and the effort caused him to cough out another mouthful of blood. After the irony taste of the blood cleared, he spoke in a weary tone. Why? Why betray me now? His voice was weak and brittle. Obito let out a dark chuckle that was mirrored by Black Zetsu before responding. You were and always were a pawn for Lord Madara's plans. These eyes never belonged to you, they belonged to Lord Madara, and he chose use. You see, your Uzumaki vitality meant that you could use the eyes without immediately dying. However, the power they require seems to have crippled you. Oh well, you were always a sacrificial pawn. Obito scowled here and glared at Nagato. You were supposed to revive Lord Madara when to his prime. You failed to secure the Biju, you failed to deal with the boy, and your final failure is your inability to resurrect our master. You are no more than a failure. Before Nagato could respond, he cried out in pain as Obito's fingers glowed green and removed his right eye. Obito casually placed it in a jar filled with a light green liquid before he rose his hand to remove the other Rinnegan. His fingers were in Nagato's left eye socket as he was forced to turn himself intangible. An orange blur crashed through his form and the Rasengan in Naruto's hand shredded the paper walls of the impromptu shelter. Cold wind blew snow into the room as a standoff ensued. Naruto, in his golden Kurama Sage mode, glared with golden slitted orbs at Obito and saw that his hand held Nagato's second Rinnegan. Zetsu, to me, Obito said urgently. We have what we came for. Naruto saw the black half of Nagato shiver as he glared at it before he growled, You think I will just let you go? I know that you will need to be tangible to retrieve your little parasite there. Black. Zetsu spoke up. You will let me go or I will kill this man, the man you call a cousin. Naruto growled and hung his head so that his golden hair shadowed his eyes. Get the fuck out of here then. I will deal with you later. Tell Madara, when you revive him, that I will send him back to the afterlife. His tone was so thick with menace that Obito felt a shiver of fear trace down his spine. Black Zetsu also shivered as he rapidly left the dying form of Nagato before crawling into the sleeve of Obito's jacket. Obito overcame his fear and spoke in a menacing tone, This is not over, Senju. With that, he phased out of existence and left Naruto to deal with a dying man. Naruto put his hands over Nagato's heart and head before channeling Kurama's chakra and some Senjutsu chakra into his body to stabilize him. Why? Nagato said as blood trickled down his chin. Why do you insist on saving me? Naruto lightly dope slapped Nagato, family above all, always and forever. Nagato chuckled lightly before he coughed out some more blood. It is my time, cousin. Let me go. No, was Naruto's firm and simple reply. Why? Because you still have to atone for what you started. I also want to show you that pain is not the primary reason for life. It is a part of life. A big part, even, however, it is not the purpose of living. Pain is there to help us grow. By overcoming the pain of the past, we steel ourselves against the adversities of the future. Fight to live, cousin, and I will offer you a new home. Where is Konan? Nagato asked wearily. Well, as soon as your eyes were taken, the jutsu you placed over the area fell. I was able to Hiraishin her back to New Uzu and she should be resting there. She only suffered chakra exhaustion, so she will be fine. Naruto kept his glowing golden hands over Nagato's head and moved from his heart to his gut. He growled in disgust before he created 4 shadow clones. The clones began carefully removing the rods from Nagato's back, and as each one was removed, the core in his gut became easier to stabilize. Can you recover, Yahiko's body? Nagato said through labored breaths. Sure. Naruto answered plainly while trying to concentrate on repairing the damage done by the yang chakra drain caused by prolonged use of the Rinnegan. You will be alright, Nagato. Can I trust you if I leave you in New Uzu? Nagato chuckled dryly, I am a broken and blind man. My dreams have been torn asunder and I am lost in the darkness. Naruto dope slapped him lightly again. Idiot, I am going to heal you. In time, I will find a pair of eyes that will suit you. Consider the temporary darkness your punishment for being a stubborn fool. Nagato laughed and was surprised to hear that the laugh was dry, as if all the blood and liquid that had pooled in his lungs was no longer plaguing him. Very well, cousin. I thank you for this chance and I shall not waste it. Naruto nodded with a victorious smile on his face, good. I can only tolerate so much stubbornness. Does that mean you will finally ask Conan on a date? Nagato coughed in surprise and turned his blinded head toward Naruto. She doesn't love me. She loved Yahiko. A third dope slap rang out in the paper shelter and Naruto looked at his cousin like the true, stubborn idiot he was. She doesn't love you. She just followed you in your dreams into the darkest pits of despair and hell. She stayed by your side for over 2 decades and she doesn't love you. Are you really that fucking stupid? Nagato remained in a contemplative silence while Naruto tended to him. His body suddenly jolted and his stomach threatened to enter his throat and exit his mouth as he felt a chakra surge. He then heard the sweet lull of the ocean and smelled fresh and warm. Ocean air. Naruto placed him in a bed and put a sleep seal over his forehead. Welcome to New Uzu, cousin. Sleep and rest, Naruto said before flashing back to Iron Country. Battle for the Port, Part 3. After the second wave of Zetsu crashed into the defensive formation, problems arose in the western flank. A Zetsu had imitated a Kumo shinobi that had fallen during a charge and the ranks had temporarily sagged as they dealt with the intruder. This momentary distraction caused the lines to be breached and chaos reigned on the western flank. This caused Itachi to send reinforcements from the center, which caused the center to start sagging. Fall back. Itachi bellowed and the allied forces fell back to the first barrier that Naruto had erected. It was a messy retreat, and the allied forces suffered their first casualties of the fight. The retreat took a total of 5 minutes and only 120 of the 168 shinobi present managed to make it back into the safety of the barrier. Naruto's clone groaned in concentration as the barrier began absorbing attacks. That was when the battlefield froze once more as the image of a giant gorilla with Sharingan-covered eyes appeared amidst the ranks of the Iwa and AIM forces. Then it was joined by a giant 3-tailed turtle and a 6-tailed slug. Naruto screamed out to B, Yugito, Temari and Gaara. 4-corner crimson flame formation. He shouted since he knew that a Jinchuriki-powered barrier was the only way the barrier would hold against the Bijudama that were forming at the mouth of each beast. B, Yugito, Temari and Gaara all spread out around the fallback point and quickly weaved through the hand seals to erect the crimson barrier. The barrier was still rising as the Bijudama shattered Naruto's clone barrier. The barrier held just long enough for the crimson barrier to rise and cover the allied forces. The massive explosion deafened all present and the crimson flame formation rippled as it held up against the mighty blasts from 3 Biju. Maintain the barrier, the clone shouted as its sage mode faded. It had expended far too much chakra for a simple wood clone, and it was on its last legs. The allied forces scrambled in the barrier to regain their footing and tend to the wounded. Of the 120 shinobi inside the barrier, there were over 50 wounded, which included Samui who had a gash in her side. Ino was suffering from chakra exhaustion, which was a common condition among the allied forces. Temari was sweating as she worked with Kokuo to protect the remaining forces. Gaara was synced with Shukaku, and a bright brown chakra cloak was emanating from him, but both Man and Biju were getting tired from the repeated S-rank jutsus. Killer B was in the best condition since he was far more used to integrating Gyuki's yokai with his own chakra. Yo, no problems here, bro. Gyuki got us covered, I don't need to be mothered. B said to I, who had come to check on him. Yugito was panting and sweating profusely as she held up her corner of the barrier. Through her pants, she yelled at B. Damn it, B, cease that incessant rap. I chuckled and shook his head, I would listen to the kitty, brother. Once this is over, she will make you pay. I ain't scared, big bro. I can take the kitty show. Rappin' is a way of life, it is even more important in this strife. B answered his brother, which earned a groan from the tired Yugito. As the Kumo group tried to recover, Tsunade was tending to the wounded. She was disappointed that Ino was so reckless with her chakra. She had told Ino that her primary objective was to provide medical care. That being said, Tsunade was concerned about the current state of things. If her watch was to be believed, then they still had 20 to 30 minutes before their own forces arrived. That was a big ask for their Jinchuriki to maintain this barrier against 3 released Biju. After a second volley of Bijudama, Tsunade's concerns grew. She idly played with the necklace that Kurama gave her, and she felt the chakra boost he gave her helping her to heal. She then decided that they needed help and pulsed chakra into the seal on the necklace. Moments later, Naruto arrived in a golden flash and soaked up the current state of things. "Everything okay on your end, brat?" Tsunade said as she returned her attention to a Kiri shinobi missing an arm. Naruto looked around the barrier and felt everyone as he answered, "Nagato is neutralized and in New Uzu with Konan. Obito took his Rinnegan before I could get there. That is an issue for another day. Okay, well, want to go tame those Jinchuriki. I don't know how much longer those four can hold this barrier." Tsunade said as Itachi approached Naruto. "She is right, Naruto. Our forces are too far away, and we were forced to fall back too quickly." Itachi added. Naruto nodded in understanding, before thinking internally, what's the damage? Kurama opened his eyes from his meditative position. "You are somewhere around 50 to 60% capacity. Don't bring out the big guns, but we should be able to handle them." Naruto's head turned as he sensed something peculiar through the barrier. "They are falling back," he said out loud. Itachi's head snapped toward the enemy position, and he saw them moving away from the red barrier. "Why?" Naruto scoffed, "Because they sensed me and Zetsu probably told them about the pincer attack. We need to write to our forces on the western flank and tell them not to engage. It is not worth it at this point." Itachi frowned and each Kage joined the group. There was a brief discussion once Naruto told them what was going on. "We should go and crush them. Our western flank can hold long enough for us to surround them." I shouted passionately. Naruto shook his head. "No, we want to avoid open engagements. If Zetsu is able to fully infiltrate our ranks, then chaos will reign. There are still thousands of Zetsu and a couple thousand Iwa and AIM shinobi. So, we just let them get away." Raza said, sounding disappointed. "Seems like a waste." Mei added. "I wouldn't say it was a waste." Itachi chimed in. "We held off thousands and killed thousands more with less than 200. That is a morale boost. However, Ruto, care to give them a going-away present?" Naruto smirked. "I was thinking the same thing. I don't have too much left in the tank, but I have enough to scare the fight out of them." "Do it," Itachi said firmly. "Give them hell for me, brat." "Can you do that giant statue thing?" I asked. "No, the fight with pain took a lot out of me. I will have to avoid that level of jutsu." Naruto answered. "They are 2 miles out now. Drop the barrier, I want to rest and gather my chakra. I will give them a going-away present once they are out of Iron Country." Itachi groaned. "What are we going to do about Iron Country? This battle was far too destructive for them to easily forgive us. You obliterated their national monument, Ruto." Naruto shrugged as he sank into a lotus position and calmed his chakra. "Blame pain for that one. Sure, I reduced the mountains to rubble, but it was pain that truly obliterated them. I think that is beside the point, Ruto." Mei said through a girly giggle. "What are you going to do, Naruto?" Tsunade asked as she felt the amount of natural energy he was gathering. Naruto's eyes opened and he formed into the synchronized mode with Kurama and Chome. "Sage Arts, Wrath of Heaven and Earth," was Naruto's short answer before he flew out of the port area with the 4 chakra. Wings granted by Chome's yokai. That sounds bad." Raza said. "It sounds destructive." Gaara added. "It sounds like a lot of paperwork." Itachi groaned. "It sounds badass," I said in a longing way, as if he wanted to see the jutsu firsthand. "What a man," Mei moaned as she clutched a hand over her heart. Kitsuchi was beyond enraged. They had the cage of each village on the ropes and Madara showed up and ordered a retreat. Ain was disheartened when he announced that the Kyuubi brat killed their so-called god. Then, the golden form of the Kyuubi brat appeared in the barrier and everyone was eager to retreat. They left thousands of fallen warriors and they were forced to endure the humility of a retreat. Sure, he understood that they were about to be surrounded, but it would have been worth it to destroy the cage. "Father, we will have another shot at them," Kuretsuchi said while placing a calming hand on her father's shoulder. A swirl appeared and Obito, still moderate to these fools, appeared running next to him. "Your daughter is right. There is another day. I secured the Rinnegan, and I will bring back Madara Uchiha to fight on our side. With Madara on our side, we will secure victory and destroy the Senju brat." Kuretsuchi stumbled mid-step and gawked at Obito. "I thought you were Madara." Obito chuckled darkly. "I am Madara's agent in this world. I carry out his plan for world peace. Who I am is not important." Kitsuchi growled, but his attention was grabbed by a massive chakra flare coming from the sky. He looked up to see a golden-orange comet heading for his formation. "Take cover," he shouted at the top of his lungs before erecting his strongest barrier. Obito looked up and said, "Oh, fuck," before he phased into his pocket dimension with Kitsuchi and Kuretsuchi, which earned a violent protest from Kitsuchi over leaving his men. Naruto flew over the enemy formation and gathered as much yokai and senjutsu chakra as he could. He finished his hand signs and saturated his body with as much of the combined chakra as he could. Once he was finished, he dropped from low orbit with as much speed and power as he could. His chakra wings flapped as fast as they could until Naruto reached terminal velocity. Every cell of his being was hardened and reinforced with yokai and senjutsu chakra to protect him from the recoil of this attack. As Naruto descended, his senjutsu chakra gathered the wind and air as he passed. A godly dragon appeared behind him and it glowed golden through the power of his chakra cloak. As he was a mere 100 feet from the ground, he saw all of the minor protections that the shinobi erected, and he offered a sincere apology to Camy for all of the paperwork he was about to send her way. A millisecond later, Naruto's golden form impacted against the rigid earth, and he brought divine wrath down upon the world. The ground shattered in his wake as his momentum carried him down over 300 feet into the earth. A massive wave of earth erupted and chased the earthquake that was easily a 10 on the Richter scale. The wave of earth rose hundreds of feet into the air and spread from his impact zone like a wrathful tsunami of earth and terror. Naruto flashed to the Horizon beacon in the port before the Sky Dragon impacted. Moments later, the Sky Dragon impacted a zone that covered nearly half a square mile and the two explosions collided with each other and pushed a blast wave out in a terrifying crash of nearly divine power. Back at the port, the Allied forces watched their hero take to the skies and they traced his trajectory upwards. They watched him fall like a comet nearly 10 miles away and their jaws dropped at the size of the wind dragon that followed in his wake and acted as the tail of his comet. They all shielded their eyes as a brilliant flash erupted after moments of impact and in less than 20 seconds they struggled to remain standing as the earth shook violently. That, however, was nothing compared to the blast wave that flattened trees in a planar wave of snow and ice that hit them a minute later. The whole Allied force had one thought ring through their minds at the same time: thank Camy, he is on our side. The reinforcements were close to the port, and they had all frozen from the earthquake and subsequent wind blast. They looked toward the event horizon in a mixture of awe and terror as they were filled with the fear of Camy. It took them 5 minutes to shake off their shock before they were able to resume their march to the port. Once the dust cleared, a bird's-eye view would show that there was a terrifyingly massive crater that was 2 miles wide. Around the crater were chunks of earth and stone the size of small hills that had been tossed about haphazardly. The trees were flattened to the ground away from the blast zone for miles and there were scant signs of life within the crater. Bodies of Iwa and Aim were scattered around the outside of the blast zone and some men ran around like ants to gather their fallen. The fear of Camy coursed through their veins and all they wanted was to return to their homes and forget this fruitless quest. Roshi, the Jinchuriki of Son Goku, cleared the ringing from his ears and pushed off the rubble that had covered him. His eyes widened and he was nearly freed from the effects of Obito's Sharingan before said man appeared beside him. The Jinchuriki listened to the orders of his master and gathered the surviving men while traversing through the uneven landscape of the crater. The total survivors were now less than 1,000 and only despair filled their thoughts and minds on this day. Naruto recovered from the massive chakra drain and backlash as he lay on his back among allies in the port in Iron Country. He winced when he felt the earthquake and he balked when he felt the power of the wind blast from this far out. He immediately knew that he would need to spend time in Iron Country to rebuild and help them recover from this battle. In the middle of his girls, Naruto found the comfort of sleep in the arms of his women as his consciousness faded to black. Thank you for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe and I'll catch you in the next part.